Chapter 1. Where the Curse Went. Steadying her breath, she stood behind her master. Maintaining total concentration and bracing herself for anything, Tino Shade adopted the state of mind shared by all first-rate hunters. It had been some time since her master had last asked for her protection. With so many enemies, it was normal for him to take an escort when he went outside. He also sometimes took one when he wasn't going outside. The actual guarding was probably beside the point. His real objective was most likely to gauge the strength of whoever was with him. For one thing, Tino had been selected for guard duty when she was much less experienced, and for another, a level 8 didn't need protection in the first place. It was usually a member of Grieving souls who was picked for guard duty. They were busy people, but it was common for at least one of them to be free, so as long as they weren't on a hunt, Tino seldom fell in the crosshairs. Today, it was simply a matter of luck that Tino was the only one with an empty schedule. Tino was brimming with a healthy degree of tension and excitement. Though she saw her master quite regularly, it had been much longer since it was just the two of them, without Lizzie. The circumstances couldn't be more ideal. Sometimes guard duty entailed a trial, sometimes it didn't. If something peculiar happened, it was usually during the former, but her mastery of her master told her that this was definitely the former. After all, the recent string of bizarre curse incidents had more or less settled down, and Krai had said he didn't plan to go out for the time being. After being swallowed by that terrifying relic chest, it appeared he was calling it mimicry. She had fulfilled her trial quota, albeit modestly. She struggled to believe anything more would happen. In other words, this was a date, of sorts. They might not go anywhere, but it was like a date. One of those at-home dates, perhaps. People had finally begun working on the wrecked lounge, and cleanup was proceeding smoothly. With the cracks in the floor and elsewhere already gone, all that was left was for the glass and furniture to be replaced, and it would be like the attack never happened. The thought of peace returning caused Tino to let out a sigh of relief. The lounge sparkled in the sunlight. There, in a corner of said lounge, her master was at a table, seated across from the carpet. With mimicry perhaps the most terrifying relic Tino had ever seen off to the side, her master looked dead serious. The carpet across from him was no mere carpet. It was one of the most famous relics there was, a flying carpet. Trying to buy one for yourself would likely set you back at least 100 million gild. However, the carpet wasn't even a mere flying carpet. According to Lucy, this relic from the vault of the Imperial Castle was a fickle thing that didn't permit riders. If you tried to force it, the carpet would flip and dump you off. At that point, it was practically a cursed item. Thinking about this reminded her of the recent curse uproar. Rumor had it that her master had been connected to all of them. Then there was the fact that the ring she had found in mimicry and given to her master, which he then gleefully put on, was Hermit's ring, an item with the power to lure in curses. Master, could it be that you really like cursed things? Sitting before his owner, the carpet was all the more placid. His legs were crossed, and he held his unsipped coffee in one hand, as he looked at Krai. He was acting like he was someone big. If he weren't a relic, and if Tino's job wasn't to stand guard behind her master's back, she would have put this carpet in his place. She was no stranger to her master's spontaneous behavior, but she couldn't imagine what he was planning to do this time. To think she had assumed she would be getting a long overdue chance to chat and maybe even go out for sweets with him. Silencing her breath, she stood like a loyal knight and watched the situation unfold. A moment ago, her master had closed his eyes and clasped his hands, but now they slowly opened back up. You know, I think you're capable of more than what I'm seeing from you right now, he said, looking directly at the carpet. As you know, flying carpets are fairly famous as far as relics go, and you're as practical as a magic bag. To add to that, in terms of size, load capacity, speed, mana consumption, and more, you've got high specs in every way a flying carpet should. You've got more potential than any other relic I own. You should be proud of this. Silence. Believe in yourself, Carpe. I don't know what your life used to be like, but you can't keep debauching with other carpets like this. You're a man meant for greater things. I'm warning you, as a friend. Fly. Let people ride you. No height is too great for you, nobody can match your speed. Master is lecturing his carpet. While listening to her master, the carpet tapped his index finger on the table. He was evidently interested in lending an ear, though Tino couldn't even hazard a guess as to where his ears might be. Her master certainly had a wide range of relics. Her understanding of the subject was showing its limitations. But why was her master so fixated on the flying carpet anyway? Much of the fame and extravagant prices of flying carpets came from the fact that so many merchants were desperate to get their hands on one. If a hunter wanted to fly, they could just do it themselves. Tino couldn't possibly do that, but it couldn't have been hard for a level 8 to manage it. Her master also had the option of riding with Lucy on her broom. As Tino watched restlessly, her master continued with even greater passion. If it's confidence you're lacking, we can train together. I'll be there every step of the way. We'll expand your possibilities, one step at a time. Does this thing even take steps? And if you can be this kind to a carpet, can't you be kind to me? He hadn't complimented her even when she retrieved that ring after being eaten by the treasure chest. Though small, there was a part of her that wished she could be reborn as a relic. She wanted to be accompanied one step at a time. The carpet was completely unfazed by her master's humble approach. Now, Tino, however, she would be overjoyed to the point of tail-wagging if he talked like this to her. No, forgive me, master. There could be some other side to this. It wouldn't be the first time you've indirectly given us some special lesson. Look at mimicry. How many magic bags have you seen like that? I almost want to say I don't even need that many features, but if you apply yourself, then you might reach the same level. Looking desperate, her master held out his hand as he talked. The carpet swatted it away. Such a cold reception caused a shift in her master's expression. Master, why do you look so glad? This wouldn't continue. Tino may have been brought here merely for protection, but she could no longer bear to watch this carpet's disrespect. Someone could walk into the lounge at any moment. After finally getting a chance to be alone with her master, she was instead a third wheel. She saw no reason why their date had to be crashed by an inanimate object, even if it was a relic. Putting on a stoic expression, she clapped her hands to draw her master's attention. Master, leave this to me. With the techniques Lucy taught me, I'll rein in this, carpe is it? You don't need to do that. Carpe is capable when he puts his mind to it. No, I must. If this goes on, it'll set a bad precedent that others might follow. Tino refused to let anyone take advantage of her master's kindness. Carpe should get hit with one of the 1,000 trials. And she certainly wanted to trade places with him. Tino was capable when she put her mind to it. Though she had undertaken many quests before, wrangling a textile was a first. Looking very serious, she took a cautious stance and slowly approached the carpet. The carpet simply shrugged his shoulders at her and floated up, over her head, and behind her master's back, which he pressed himself against. Tino gulped. What a fluid movement that was. This was no ordinary relic if it could go over her head like that. Just what she'd expect from a relic her master saw so much potential in. Ah, how bold. No, to use master as a shield is cowardice. And, master, please don't let him get away with it. Hold on. If I can't ride him, maybe I can wear him like a cape. While voicing this bizarre idea, he tried to tie the carpet's hands in front of him. It was no use. Her master couldn't be relied on at times like these. Taking a deep breath, Tino fortified her resolve. She flipped an internal switch, causing her heartbeat to accelerate just a bit. Her heart vibrated so much it scared her. She felt a warmth overtake her body. Though it wasn't much compared to what Lizzie could pull off, Tino had recently learned a sort of pseudo-stifled shadow. Her senses were sharper, and she felt a sharp pain in the back of her skull. Her muscles quaked, begging to release their power. She hadn't imagined this would be how she first demonstrated this skill of hers, but now wasn't the time to be fussy. This carpet wouldn't get away. She would grab the unruly thing, and then what? If you don't listen to Master, I'll wring you out like a rag. Tino, calm down. Her master tried frantically calling her name, but it was because he acted like this that the carpet took advantage of him. If he treated the carpet like he treated Tino, the carpet might grow to respect him, but he chose not to. What discrimination! Are you going to give the carpet a trial, or spoil me equally? Take your pick, Master. Using her master as a shield was futile. Tino had the advantage of training. A carpet who indulged in pleasures of flesh and drink was no match for someone who had been trained by brutal trials. She was going to tear this rug off her master's back and teach him some respect. Tino watched the carpet's every move. His outline was different from a human's, but if she caught his movements when they started, she should be able to read him. If she successfully taught the carpet a lesson, her master would think better of her, and she was certain he would finally reward her. She took short breaths. Perhaps intimidated by her, the carpet's hand twitched. It was about to fly off at the same moment, but there was a sudden noise from the entrance. Tino was instantly reminded that her primary goal was protecting her master. She directed her attention towards the sound, just in time to see a human figure collapsing. A man clad in armor had entered the lounge. He wasn't wearing the sort of armor that prioritized lightness, as most hunters preferred, but knight's armor that both projected might and pleased the eye. He wasn't wearing a helmet, probably because they were in the city. With her senses heightened by her pseudo-stifled shadow, Tino was able to recognize the man's face before he fell. Her master jumped when he heard the noise. His eyes were wide open. Who's that? It's Hugh, Master. Hugh Regland from the Zero Order, the man who thoughtlessly said he wanted to be your apprentice. Ah. A vague response. Was he serious or was he joking? Tino was fairly certain he was joking. It must have been his way of checking if Tino could remember. Considering Lizzie had knocked him out and brought him in, then he abruptly requested to be her master's apprentice, he had left an impression that made him hard to forget. With looks resembling arcs, he was an unpleasant man, but that didn't change the fact that he was a knight from a famously selective order. What in the world had happened to him? Still in his chair, her master took a deep breath and whispered, "Is he dead?" "He's alive, Master. His heart is working, though he appears to be exhausted." Tino tentatively approached the collapsed knight. His armor, which had been expertly polished when they met, was now blackened with soot and covered with small scratches. His hair was disheveled, and he gave off an odd smell. It was the smell of sewage. She poked him with the tip of her shoe. It seemed he hadn't suffered any serious wounds. "Master, what should we do? I don't think he'll die if we leave him alone." Well then. Why not let him be?" He said this with the carpet still clinging to his back. "Master, don't you think there's a bit of a discrepancy between how you treat people and how you treat that carpet? This man is a noble, for what it's worth." While wondering what to do, Hugh suddenly began to move. He must have regained consciousness. He didn't seem to have the strength to stand up, but with pained movements, he managed to turn himself onto his back. Just looking at his face made it clear he had run into something you didn't see every day. Not a trace was left of the initial brisk look he had. When he had first arrived, Lizzie had knocked him out, but he looked far worse now. His cheeks were sunken, and he had dark rings under his eyes. He had rough stubble on his chin, and his skin was dry. Worn out, too, as though he had been stranded in the wilderness for days on end. However, looking into his slightly open eyes revealed a glimmer in his pupils. When he saw Tino, a tiny smile of relief formed on his lips. He lifted his arms, as though mustering the last of his strength, presenting what he had been holding against his chest. "Bring this," he said slowly, to the mentor. "Chem." It was pure reflex. A thief's job was to scout enemies, detect traps, and do other things that might keep the party far from harm. Waiting until you saw and understood was too slow. For true danger, a thief needed intuition. Tino took a step back, only realizing a few seconds later that she had retreated. When she found herself short of breath, she realized she had forgotten to breathe. Every skill she had developed for detecting danger was now alerting her at full volume. Mimicry was a terrifying relic, but lacked an air of danger. This, however, would make even an untrained civilian wary the moment they laid eyes on it. What Hugh held out was a small wooden box. Though beautifully decorated, it was no relic, just an ordinary box. But its miasma was anything but. She felt a chill deep inside her. This was much more ominous than any phantom she had ever encountered. The alarm bells in her head wouldn't stop. In fact, it was strange she hadn't noticed it until Hugh had held it up. She didn't know what was inside, but there was one thing she was sure of: this was something no human could handle. She was certain Hugh was aware of what a bone-chilling thing this box was. She was pretty sure even an average person would steer clear of it. It struck her as a miracle that he had managed to bring it all the way here. With such dense miasma, just touching it should be enough to chip away at the spirit. Even if it didn't cause physical pain, the spirit influenced the flesh. Hugh's arms trembled as he held the box. I did it," he said in a raspy voice. "Tell him." "CCU." "Did what?" "Tell what?" "See you." "What am I supposed to say?" There were so many things she wanted to ask him. Where did he find this? What was it? Why did he bring it here? This was something the Church of the Radiant Spirit should firmly seal off. However, there wasn't enough time for that. Hugh was at his limits, and once he lost consciousness, he probably wouldn't be getting back up for a good while. Tino needed a hint, no matter how tiny. Losing their strength at last, the arms holding up the box crashed to the ground. The box bounced across the ground, stopping when it hit a wall. With a vague look in his eyes, Hugh offered his final words. "Cursed items. RN. Chem." The last string of his consciousness severed, Hugh's body went limp. Forcing her stiff limbs to move, Tino turned in the direction of her master. Even the relic seemed able to understand the current danger, as Krai was clinging much more tightly to Krai. Paying the relic an excessive amount of attention, he said in his usual relaxed voice, I don't need it." Now Tino understood it all. The trial isn't over yet. Wait, Master, I can't do anything about this. Not in a million years. Oh. Is this because of the ring I gave you? Sure, that is a relic that drowses in curses. Her master had put his clan members through all sorts of tribulations, and while some had been wounded, they had barely managed to avoid having any deaths. It was a miracle made possible by his rare foresight and preterhuman artifice. However, the same couldn't be said for Hugh's box. This would get them killed. Though she couldn't tell what was inside it, even someone enhanced by mana material like Tino wouldn't last a second against whatever it was. There was a vast gap between this and anything she had overcome before. The thought of trying to conquer it didn't even occur to her. Had her master upped the difficulty because she had improved recently? If she could keep it closed, she could take it to the Church of the Radiant Spirit, and maybe they would be able to do something about it. Fear and confusion kept her in place. That and the guilt that this might be because of the ring she found. They would have to run. This wasn't something a hunter could manage. "Master, run. Contact the Church of the Radiant Spirit. I'll stay here." Neither her mouth nor her tongue would move. She managed to move her face just a bit. She had faith that the look in her eyes would get the message across. With a nod, her master got up and walked past her frozen form. He picked the box up off the floor, and though he couldn't have possibly failed to notice the miasma, he opened it up with complete nonchalance. This time for sure, Mr. Caution would be done for. Walking through the busy streets of the imperial capital of Zabrudia, little Sister Fox let out a sigh that contained a multitude of emotions. To think that a foolish human could for even a second triumph over a holy fox in a battle of wits would be a mistake. It was because of that Mr. Caution lacked proper respect for little Sister Fox and even began to message her as if they were friends. But the outcome of this battle of wits would correct all that. She gave him cursed items RN, and she did one smooth move. She thrust into his hands the most heinous cursed item housed in the vault of Peregrine Lodge. She was enamored with her skill. The contracts of Peregrine Lodge were fair to both parties. The nature of the contract varied depending on when the intruder arrived, but as the case of Mr. Caution proved, these contracts could damage Peregrine Lodge just as they could intruders. As a result of a previous contact, they confiscated a cursed item from a noble spirit intruder, much to the Phantom Fox's misfortune. Merely looking at this item was enough to make it clear that some horrific power was lurking within it. Older Brother Fox was probably right in that this curse wouldn't go after phantoms. It was in a dormant state, but were it to be released upon the world, it would be too much for the hands of humans. With nowhere to direct its ire while residing within Peregrine Lodge, the curse had smoldered for years, growing stronger and stronger. Even that man with no sense of caution would surely be wary around the box. Just picturing his panicking face was enough to make up for all Little Sister Fox had been forced to endure thus far. This time, that man would definitely apologize for his irreverence. He would apologize and sob while begging her to do something. And she would refuse him with all her heart. She would make him admit defeat. She would make him grovel and serve her fried tofu. Her plan at the Supreme Warrior Festival had been a massive failure. In the end, her actions benefited Mr. Caution, and though she had let his enemy slip away, he was apparently yet to realize that. If she had given up after that, Mr. Caution would never learn his lesson. Her new plan, on the other hand, was perfect. Taking every possible precaution, she analyzed the circumstances, then shoved a dangerous, cursed item onto Hugh, who had been ordered to search for such an item. Once told how Hugh had come across the box, any old moron would be able to piece together that this was the work of Little Sister Fox. That man would also be forced to realize that he had brought disaster upon the imperial capital because he had underestimated the progeny of a god. This was what happened when you antagonized the spectral foxes known for wreaking havoc on their foes. She felt a change in the wind. The humans hadn't yet realized it, but she knew that it had begun. A sacred gem with a tragic past. Known even throughout the human world, it was a vile object of malign powers left behind by a long line of noble spirits. A seed of carnage that had once been removed from the world and stored in Peregrine Lodge was now beginning to sprout. The air was still. She watched the clan house, where Mr. Caution currently was. Swirling dark clouds gathered in the sky above. She had been a bit concerned because that box was designed to protect the curse inside, but it seemed it had been opened as she hoped it would. In the blink of an eye, the expanding malignant energies would cover the entire city. Calamity would fall on millions of people. As far as Little Sister Fox could tell, Mr. Caution lacked many things besides just caution, but even if he had been concealing his powers, he couldn't possibly keep so many people safe from such a widespread curse. Hell, Little Sister Fox herself wouldn't be able to easily recall a curse once it had begun to disseminate. Now she would watch and see what that man with no sense of caution would do in the face of powers that exceeded human comprehension. Satisfied that things were going to plan, she folded her arms and nodded to herself. Then she noticed something unnatural. Chem. The curse. It's not spreading. She did not doubt that those clouds above the clan house were the curse's enmity given form. It's just that if the humans' legends were true, those clouds were supposed to instantly blanket the nation. Yet not only were they not moving out, they were stopped above the clan house. That curse had been formed by the incursions and destruction wrought by humans during a war. With its fixation on the lives of humans and their societies, the imperial capital of Zebrudia was an ideal target for it. This couldn't be happening. After so many years, that accursed gem had already forgotten its form and become an ambiguous power that struck indiscriminately. It should be trying to kill as many humans as it possibly could. There was no way humans could control this curse, nor was it something they could purify. Moving away from the clan house so she could watch her victory from afar had proved to be a mistake. She didn't know what was going on, but going to investigate would mean her loss. She found herself rubbing her eyes as she stared at the clouds. The swirling clouds writhed like serpents before disappearing into the clan house. It was as if they had been sucked in. I picked up the beautifully engraved box after it had been tossed recklessly onto the floor. Then I carefully opened the lid, and smoke black as a stormy sky erupted out. It reached the ceiling and drifted towards the still broken windows of the lounge, yet showed no signs of abating. It moved relentlessly, like the waterfalls Luke used for his training. It was so absurd, all I could do was laugh. Was this Otoheim's? As I stood there, blinking, Tino looked at me with a ghostly pallor. "WH, what are you doing? Master?" "Heh." She had given me an apologetic glance that said, "What if the contents are damaged?" "I'm sorry, Master," so I wanted to put her at ease. It's not like I had any idea what was going on anyway. I had forgotten about Hugh until Tino reminded me of him, and I had no idea why he had collapsed, why he was here, or what that box he had brought was. I might have appeared calm because I was used to stuff like this happening, but I was fairly perplexed. If looks were anything to go by, this smoke was nothing good. Perhaps haze would be a better word to describe it. The smoke given off by fires was nasty when inhaled, and I had no idea what would happen if I let this haze cover me. Tino wobbled towards me. "Master, oh outside, there's something bad." Now, relax. Ventilation. Ventilation is important. Maybe I should let it out instead of letting it fill the room. And it's not like I can do anything about it." Coughing up smoke, I looked at the box. Where did they manage to pack all that smoke? It didn't look like a relic. I spotted a red glimmer amid the smoke. It was a gem, a fairly large one. Since I had my safety rings, I was ready to shove my hand in and grab it, but found myself being yanked backwards. I stumbled, and the box fell from my hands. It was the carpet, still on me like a cape, that had pulled me back. As I processed this, the smoke converged on the spot I had just been standing in. "Eek!" Tino shrieked as she retreated. The smoke that had drifted out of the broken windows had returned to the clan house. It moved unnaturally, like it had a will of its own. The pace at which it erupted from the box now seemed sluggish compared to the current cascade. Could it be? Did Krai save me? I guess it's easier to believe he just wanted to save himself. Maybe that cold attitude of his is calculated. Master, this. The returning smoke was all gathering in one spot. It was beautiful and ominous, like something from another world. I had seen my fair share of wild stuff, but even I couldn't stop myself from stepping back. With her sharp senses, Tino probably had a better idea of just how dangerous this stuff was. She was ready for battle, but her teeth were chattering. Why did it come back after leaving the clan house? It didn't need to do that. The gathered smoke thickened and took shape. Oddly enough, it reminded me of when Murrin's lament had been unsealed. However, there had been preparations made during that purification. Here, we had no layered barrier magic circle, nor Ark, Franz, or anyone else. At this point, the smoke wasn't even really smoke. The amalgamated black haze had formed a clear humanoid outline, then the darkness flowed off it, revealing a girl with closed eyes. It was the same setup as with Murrin, but this girl wasn't as decrepit as Murrin. Nor was she human. With pointed ears and sculpted features, she was a noble spirit. She wore a black robe that spilled to the floor, like something befitting a magus. Around her neck hung an eye-catching pendant. It was blood red and had a bewitching shine. Looking at it, I felt my heartbeat accelerate and my breath catch in my throat. My gut told me that this was what had been in the box. It was a pointless thing to think about, but I remembered how noble spirits were experts when it came to curses. This thing couldn't be alive. Her legs didn't touch the ground, nor did she have the air as something alive. Not even I needed to deliberate on whether this was a friend or foe. Calm down, Krai Andrey. Tino's here, and since you're technically the clan master, you can't make a disgrace of yourself here. So what was I to do? Run? Ask for help? Whose help? Of course this happened after I had returned the sounding stone to Franz. Given the circumstances, I had to negotiate. I was about out of other options. Phantoms, monsters, curses, I was helpless against all of them. I would have to take the love and peace approach. Hadn't I always saved my skin through groveling and negotiating in a friendly manner? Even the generally unaffable noble spirits had a few kind souls among them. I just had to pretend this figure was Chris or Eliza. I held up my right hand and grinned as I approached the mysterious noble spirit. Then her eyes opened. Those pupils sparkled. My muscles froze, locking me in place like a frog before a snake. I didn't feel afraid per se, but it was possible my very soul was being intimidated. Those two eyes drifted my way, yet they didn't settle on me. I followed their direction and found the source of their fixation, the ring. On my right hand, raised to show I meant no harm, I had a wooden ring on my index finger. Recovered from inside mimicry by Tino, this was Hermit's ring, a relic said to attract curses. Now that I think about it, the writing carved into the ring and the design on the box are pretty similar. Hatred broiled deep within the noble spirit's eyes. She had an attractive face and wore a level expression, but if anything, that made her burning emotions all the more apparent. I immediately tried to remove the ring, but as I expected, it didn't budge. I tried this and that, all the while the noble spirit reached out, as though guided by her arm, a host of black, lance-like objects lunged forward from behind her. Though the lances weren't particularly fast, there was no way I could dodge them. Krai suddenly wrapped around from behind and pulled me back. The lances, though I kept referring to them that way, they were wavy like kelp, just barely managed to reach me when they were deflected by a safety ring. If you're gonna do that, don't take your time, Krai. But I suppose if I hadn't had him wrapped around me like a cape, he would have just flown off by himself. Lucky me. Thanks to his pulling, my body was jolted out of the sleep paralysis-like state I was in. Still being dragged, I stumbled along. Once again, pursuing strands of kelp managed to hit me, exhausting another safety ring. Damn, they're not missing. If this keeps up, I'm going to run out of rings and die. Somebody, save me. Oh, the church. If we can make it to the church, I bet they'll be able to do something about this. Ansem's there, after all. I had a feeling Krai would be willing to fly now that things were getting dire. Luckily for us, the lounge's windows were broken, and I could still take a few more hits. It was my lucky day. I darted up to a terrified Tino and grabbed her hand. I couldn't leave the poor, innocent girl behind. Hugh, well, he was a necessary sacrifice. If we make it out of this alive, I'm going to have a lot of questions about why he brought me that bizarre thing. Let's go, Tino. Ah, master. I sprinted towards the broken glass. I hadn't moved my body like this in a while. Krai gracefully dodged the swarm of incoming lances. Each and every one of the dogged projectiles connected perfectly with my head before being blocked by a safety ring. Tino wasn't hit, thankfully, but I was pretty sure these lances were deliberately coming for me alone. It didn't hurt or anything, though it did scare the hell out of me. The black kelp slithered along the ground after us. A black decay ate into the newly repaired tile flooring. I thought about sending the noble spirit a bill. It seemed that the figure of condensed darkness was capable of retracting and extending the umbral smoke at will. It was kind of cool, but how was she doing it? What was that thing? Sadly, I didn't have time for extraneous questions. I braced myself, then jumped out the window, bringing Tino with me. Fly, Krai. Now's your chance to show what you're made of. I felt gravity's pull. Then, perhaps obeying my orders, perhaps just trying to save his own life, Krai's edges began to lift. Then the knot in front of my neck came undone, and my vision turned upside down. Still holding Tino's hand, we were about to fall headfirst from the clan house when Tino managed to grab hold of the carpet's edges, pulling us into the sky. If I had been the one closer to the carpet, I definitely wouldn't have been able to catch that. Nice, Tino. It had to destroy. At its core, all that remained was that sentiment and nothing else. It was conscious and retained memories of being alive. However, up against emotions strong enough to manifest as phenomena, memories were like a pebble on the road. Only one thing mattered, that the queen of the noble spirits finish what should have been long ago. In those forests long inhabited by her people, she drove out the humans and protected her kith from any intruders who entered without due respect or reverence. Their war with the humans was undeniably an existential matter. Defeat would spell extinction or enslavement by the humans. The great powers of the noble spirit queen existed to avoid just that. Indeed, even should her very flesh come to ruin. Awakening after a long period of silence, it found itself in an unbelievably large city abounding with the enemy. It detected massive buildings in lines that stretched to the horizon and more lifeforms than could be counted. It was more than 10 times the noble spirits that once lived in the forest it had once reigned over. However, no amount of strength or number of its foes would change what it had to do. Memories came flooding back, fanning accursed, murderous desires. During the war, many comrades perished, as did the invaders. Tragedies and oaths alike had spawned in great numbers. It would kill as many foes as it could, save as many allies as it could. Rinse blood with blood, overwrite tragedy with tragedy. Fear would birth fear, animus would proliferate. Just like it always had. No longer was there room in its heart for it to lament these truths. Acting almost on instinct, it let strife and the desire to kill flow through the town. Then, it abruptly reeled its consciousness back into focus. In its long, bloody history, nothing in existence took priority over the erasure of those who had massacred the noble spirits. However, something very nettlesome was currently demanding attention. Such a novel experience restored rationality to a mind that once thought of naught but annihilation. Reverting from a form intended for efficient murder to its original shape, its eyes fell upon a single unremarkable man. He was a youthful human forgettable in every way. His bearing was quite unlike that of a warrior. Normally, it wouldn't have even acknowledged him or noticed if it crunched him like a bug. And yet, for some reason, looking at this man incited an inexplicable irritation. The burning fury deep within demanded that this man die before anyone else. The Rancer proclaimed that killing him would be equivalent to killing a billion other humans. Logically, it knew such a thing couldn't be true. It knew that decimating this city should take priority. But it had to attack this man. Grinding its teeth, it stared at him from a few meters away. That was when it caught sight of the familiar wooden ring he wore on his finger. Long ago, its cohorts had worn it in order to draw in and subdue curses. Why this man had that ring was unclear, but there was no mistaking what it was. This would explain the broiling irritation. Now it knew the reason. It understood entirely. All was clear and apparent. Relieved, it took a breath. Then it attacked, driven by pure instinct. The man deflected each blow. It understood. But that didn't matter. There would be no reconsidering, hesitating, holding back, or any other such drudgery. It would simply destroy, as its power and instincts commanded. Assailed by a flurry of attacks, the young man began to run. Dangling and drifting as he was pulled along by a bizarre carpet, he moved like fishing bait. Hanging from the carpet, he rapidly put distance between himself and it. Thousands of human beings who deserved death looked up at him with wide eyes. They probably couldn't wrap their heads around what they were seeing. No matter. This city's annihilation can wait. A voice of reason berated it. "Oh, what are you doing, Queen of the Noble Spirits?" The voice said. "How could the guardian of such a proud people be fooled by a tool like that? You know you're being toyed with. What folly." With a stabbing pain in its head, blazing, murderous rage altered its form. Then, doing something it had done very rarely since becoming a curse, it spoke. "Perish. No escape, not in an eternity." No amount of 1,000 trials could have prepared Tino for this series of twists and absurdities. Her spirit was a flame flickering in the wind. She was confident that this was worse than any trial undergone by her or anyone else. No matter their strength, humans still had limitations. This strange power, however, overcame those limitations with ease. In her last glimpse, Tino had caught sight of the pointy ears indicative of a noble spirit. That was probably the cursed Crimson Spirit Stone, the famous curse borne by the Queen in order to eradicate humans. In that moment, Tino had a very acute thought. When Master assigns a trial, he doesn't hold back. This was a curse of unparalleled horror. A curse that had once plunged the world into an abyss of fear. Truly, there could be no better way to wrap up this chain of curses. Though it might also wrap up her life. Her master was pulling her hand and covering her from attacks, but this was one time she couldn't bring herself to be glad about it. That thing didn't consider Tino an enemy, but a simple brush from it would be enough to get her killed. In her right hand, she held the carpet, in her left, she held her master's hand. Her training had paid off. No, that was a test. Her master would never jump from the lounge without thinking, so that must have been a test to see if she could catch him. He was pure evil. Tino would have cried if she had the luxury to, but it was all she could do to continue drawing breath and keep her struggling heart going. The carpet was flying through the sky with ease, but that did nothing to soothe her. "Are you all right, Tino?" her master asked casually while dangling below her. "Am I too heavy?" "Huh? What are you talking about? How could you possibly be too heavy for me?" Yeah, Tino was getting her training for Lizzie. She could carry her master plus another 10 people and still have room to spare. "So do I really need to do more trials, master?" The carpet flew along at high speed. Unfortunately, it didn't seem like they had time to get on top of it. But they didn't need to. As long as they could get away from that thing, nothing else mattered. People on the ground looked transfixed at the sight of them hanging from a carpet, soaring along. Tino thought they should be evacuating, not looking up at the sky. She had detected extraordinary fury in that curse. If that were to be taken out on the city, then even the imperial capital of Zabrudia might meet its end. Her master let out a deep breath, perhaps one of relief. "Let's get to the Church of the Radiant Spirit. ASAP. Please do something about that thing. ASAP. Can you do something about it? Something will be done, right?" Tino got the feeling that even the experts at the Church of the Radiant Spirit wouldn't be able to solve this. If someone could solve this, they more than deserved to be level 10. Tino had planned to go on a date with her master today, and what a date it turned out to be. She longed for the days when going out just meant getting captured by bandits. "Did we lose it?" he asked, completely relaxed. Incredibly carefree, as usual. "Hold on, master, are you not gripping my hand? It feels like I'm the only one holding on." She swallowed these words before she voiced them, then turned and looked at the clan house off in the distance. Carpei was one speedy relic. All she could see of the clan house was the spire. Just the spire. "IIT's transformed. Master, it's chasing after us." At that moment, a long-limbed black ape-like creature was climbing up the clan house. Given the size of the spire, the creature must have been a couple of dozen meters tall. Showing no interest in the civilians, its blindingly bright eyes were focused solely on the two of them. No, not the two of them. Tino didn't feel its gaze. It was looking only at her master. Looking at it in hindsight, the creature had only gone after Krai back at the clan house. "Maybe that thing is after Krai. If he left me back there, then I definitely wouldn't be caught in the crossfire, no." With a shake of her head, Tino restored her faithful heart. It was because of the ring she found that her master was being attacked in the first place. He had said this was all according to plan, but even if it was, Tino was still undoubtedly the reason this was happening. "I'm going to vomit, master." "It's transforming? Why?" "It's just giving in to bad impulses, master." "Bad impulses? Can bad impulses make things transform?" When Tino gave in to bad impulses and put on that mask, she did indeed transform. No, that was different. Using both its arms as well as its legs, the colossal ape leaped from rooftop to rooftop. Using the cityscape as its road, the creature traveled with incredible speed. The buildings it stepped on didn't show any signs of crumbling, meaning it must not have been as heavy as it seemed. Waves of screams erupted as people noticed the Lightfoot fiend. But as long as it stuck to the rooftops, the people down there wouldn't be crushed. The real issue was that it didn't seem at all inclined to give up on Tino and her master. Hatred burned in its eyes. The very smoke from that box had seemed malicious, and now it was like all that dispersed rage had been condensed. Faster, Carpe, Tino begged. To the church. Tino, Carpe doesn't do what people tell Dash. Carpe sped up. Now it was like he had become the wind. Tino was certain that if she and her master took a tour around the capital while atop the carpet, it would be wonderful. Despite their acceleration, the ape still moved faster. She was just eyeballing it, but she was fairly sure the ape was slowly catching up. Its innate abilities and the length of its strides were too much for the carpet. They just had to be grateful the ape couldn't fly. Tino wanted to try slowing it down with a ranged attack, but she had no way to do that. It didn't work, Master. It's still going to catch up to us. Alright. But we'll be fine. For some reason, he seemed despondent, but when he looked up, he had one of those smiles meant to help forget any imminent peril. It was a smile that unsettled her. We'll be at the Church of the Radiant Spirit soon enough. Just as I planned. After that, Ansem will do something. That's not a plan. Ansy, please do your best. The Church of the Radiant Spirit came into view. There was a large gate built with Ansy in mind and a chalk-white bulwark evocative of a castle. The church had expertise in curses as well as in healing. Rumor had it that all the church's buildings were built to be resilient. They claimed that the churches, especially the big ones, had fortifications on par with castles because they were housing hazardous items. Just outside the church, priests stared in shock at the incoming carpet. When they saw that it was being pursued by an ape that was self-evidently some sort of curse, the blood drained from their faces. A number of stationed paladins frantically ran outside. Their movements were refined and indicative of their relentless training, but that wasn't going to do much in the face of the approaching curse. Conventional weapons probably wouldn't be much help here. The ape looked like it could shake off a cannon blast. Ansem exited through the gate, helmet removed. Krai waved his hand. Ansem, the rest is up to you, he called. For the first time, Tino saw a faint hint of stress on Ansem's usually placid face. Once the ape was about 10 meters from them, it bounded into the air. Carpe rapidly climbed upward, passed over the wall before diving into the church's courtyard, passing by Murrin's lament, that curse awaiting purification. Tino had heard all about it. The ape swung its arms down, effortlessly demolishing the very wall they had just passed over. Boasting an inordinately large frame, Ansem Smart was one of the best paladins in the imperial capital. With high physical attributes and exceptional healing skills, he may have been a silent one, but he was the most famous member of Grieving Souls. To what Tino could tell, Ansy was more reliable than any other griever. He was almost the most stable. He wasn't as intense as the others, and it wasn't hard to understand why he had the second highest level after Kraim, but even still, Tino didn't think it would be easy for him to bring down this fiend by himself. The carpet glided into the courtyard, and once their feet were on the ground, they looked back at the gate. The umbral ape had destroyed it in one hit. Though the walls were tough as those that would encompass a castle, they may as well have been made of building blocks. It was simple fortune that prevented any attacks from hitting Murrin's lament. Lights crackled around the ape's gigantic arms. This was the work of barriers meant to ward off anyone who walked with darkness. However, the ape didn't appear to be in any sort of pain, and it wasn't long before there was a crunching sound followed by the lights dying out. Tino gulped as she watched. This thing was too powerful. To think that the barriers of the capital's primary branch of the Church of the Radiant Spirit couldn't do anything. Rubble rained down. The air trembled. We're under attack, the priests yelled, though it was a bit late for that. Viewed up close, the ape was overwhelmingly massive. It was a fiend large enough to make Ansy appear small. The priests were all completely cowed by the fiend's might. Not that Tino was in any position to talk, but something told her they had lost before the battle even began. Just then, Ark Rodin and the rest of Ark Braves came rushing out from the church. He was dressed not in casual clothes, but in armor. His sword was drawn, ready to fight. Tino gasped out of sheer surprise. Even as a devout member of Team Krai, Tino had to admit that Ark's radiant figure was very much that of a champion. "What? What is that?" cried Isabella the Magus. "What horrific power?" "Said you, the saint." "It burst through the barriers with ease," remarked Armel, to use her master's words, Roria. Standing at the front of his party, Ark let out a small sigh. "Franz said fox might strike, but I certainly wasn't expecting an ape. What's going on?" Ark Rodin and Ansem Smart were both among the most prolific level 7s in the imperial capital. Though it was faint, they offered a glimmer of hope. Though it seemed no human could best the ape, these two might change that. The next moment, additional hunters appeared from within the church. What's that?" "We can't fight that." Some Tino recognized, others she didn't. There were both hunters who paled at the might of the powerful ape, and those who readied their weapons and prepared for battle. Not everyone in that group was necessarily first-rate, but if they had one thing going for them, it was numbers. Including the priests, there were perhaps nearly 100 on their side. They stood before a powerful foe, but with a large force that included Ark and Ansi, then maybe. "But I heard that the operation to purify Murin's lament was already finished. So why are all these people on standby?" Tino blinked as she tried to figure this out. "Oh, look how many hunters are here," her master said from behind her. Could this be part of his plan? It must be. She was certain of it. Open the box, release the curse, prepare fighters for an ambush at the church, an advantageous position, then lure the curse here. Could that not be called pre-to-human artifice? In which case, since he had brought Tino here, was she also part of that force? While she stood there, baffled, the giant ape glanced over the hunters. Then the battle began. Ark channeled power into his relic, a blade that was almost synonymous with his name. Swinging a sword, Ansi charged forward. Other hunters began coordinated ranged attacks. The priests began offering prayers, which brought down pillars of light. A relentless barrage of attacks hit the massive ape, which it ignored as it made a furious charge straight for Krai. It had no interest in any of the priests or hunters. Ansi tried to snag the ape's legs, but it simply bounded over him, then swung its fist at Tino's master. Though the attack wasn't meant for her, she was going to take collateral damage. Just as she was about to dash to safety, the pitch-black arm was seared by a blinding white light. It took a breath for her to process it. Ark had done that. Ark had attacked. The Holy Sword Historia was a storied weapon, said to be capable of rending even the celestial god. The light unleashed by Ark Rodin's sword had turned the wretched ape's arm into dust. Just what you'd expect from Relic, which specializes in sheer firepower. The man wielding said Relic may have been pseudo-handsome and inferior to her master, but he was still very much one of the leading figures in this golden age of treasure hunting. Missing an arm, the ape eyed Ark for a moment. Tino began to think that they had a shot at eliminating this curse. The thought of this brought a smile to her face. Ark, however, looked much more bitter. "No good. It's too tough," he muttered. "I released all the remaining power, yet only took off one arm. I don't have enough history to take it down." No good." "Ark, the arm you took off," Isabella screamed. In the blink of an eye, the arm had regenerated to its original state. Some monsters had high regenerative capabilities, but this was something else. What's more, the ape didn't even seem to mind that its arm had been blown off. "Master, it looks like we're screwed." It appeared this was a trial with no solution. The ape let out a howl. The sound of it ripped through the church and staggered Tino. She heard bodies falling over. She looked around and saw that about half the priests had been knocked down. Some of the hunters had hit the ground as well. Tino felt like an idiot for thinking for even a moment that they might win. The ape settled its gaze back on Krai. Then, after being passed over earlier, Ansi struck at the ape in an attempt to draw its attention. Though his shining blade dug into the ape's leg, tearing off the darkness, the ape not only showed no hint of pain, but it didn't so much as acknowledge Ansi. He didn't even slow the fiend down. It was a gutsy move, But that wasn't what this battle called for. What terrible and tragic might. It saddens me to think that Murrin's lament isn't the only curse of this magnitude, said a man in a trembling voice. Tino recognized this man. It was Father Edgar, the priest who had done so much for Ansi. Krai clapped his hands, as though this had reminded him of something. Ivy got it. If that's the case, why don't we unseal Murrin's lament and have the two fight? Would that not be insanely risky? No. The reticent Ansem opined while desperately swinging his sword at the ape. The dogged hunters momentarily forgot their battle, and all looked at Krai when they heard his suggestion. Ansem, go break that seal. If we can't win with a force like this, then that's our only option. No. See, calm down, thousand tricks. Murrin's lament isn't something you can use at your convenience. Both Ansi and Father Edgar stopped Krai. And why the hell wouldn't they? They were eager for any plan that might give them a fighting chance, but this one was far too eccentric. When he noticed that nobody was voicing support for his plan, Krai sulkingly furrowed his brow. Then he looked at Tino. What is it? Why are you looking at me, master? She took an automatic step back. Her master said nothing. However, those black eyes stared straight at her. His gaze wasn't particularly intense, nor was he coercing her. Yet that look was enough to make her feel like she had no other options. With a grunt, she gave in to momentum and darted off, letting her legs carry her across the courtyard full of collapsed people. She wished someone would stop her, but nobody did. After all, as a thief, speed was her specialty, not to mention the hunters were all concentrating on the curse. And besides, the real enemy, the umbral ape, had no interest in her. She flitted past the fiend with surprising ease, leapt towards the two curses bound in the air, and climbed up Murrin's lament, using the chains binding Murrin's body as her handholds. The accursed girl's eyes flew open when she saw Tino. It's fair to say that even a curse would be pretty caught off guard if someone suddenly tried to undo their seal. Nothing about this struck Tino as a good idea, but Murrin couldn't be as bad as that ape. She just had to believe. Tino! Isabella cried. She was holding up her staff, preparing an advanced offensive spell. Return to your senses. I'm sorry, but Master told me to do it. That's why we're telling you to get a grip. He didn't say a damn thing. Don't be hasty, Tinu. Everyone was telling Tino to stop. Facing such strong resistance, Tino felt she was doing something idiotic, even suicidal. But she had no choice. She was her master's loyal servant. What he said was absolute. His preterhuman artifice was absolute. Her master was perfect. His only flaw was that he seemed to have no regard for anyone else's struggles. Besides, perhaps fighting a curse with another curse wasn't such a bad idea. Tino didn't know much about curses, but her master wouldn't say something without proper consideration. Tino mustered her strength. The chains came off so easily, she struggled to believe they were part of a powerful relic. The dark energies of Murrin became a magnitude stronger, hitting Tino with a wave of dizziness. The ape ceased its fervent attack on Krai and looked at Tino for the first time. Apparently, not even that fiend could overlook the church's worst curse. This might work. With all her might, Tino ripped out the chains piercing Murrin. The chains hit the ground with a light clatter. The momentum of taking them out caused Tino to fall as well. A soul-freezing wail swept across the courtyard. Tino felt a chill, as though something was brushing her just beneath her skin. This was followed by a nearby sound of metal hitting something hard. When she looked up, she saw that the knight in Murrin's embrace had landed on the ground and was now rising from a kneeling position. Though his armor had been crushed and battered, it now appeared good as new. Did he absorb the energy released by the ape? Murrin got behind the Black Knight. The ape glared at the now released cognate beings. Their auras collided and mingled, completely altering the cleansed air of the church. The auras were so interwoven, Tino couldn't so much as tell which one had the upper hand. Murrin and the ape stared each other down, acknowledging each other. Father Edgar, Ansi, Krai, All gulped as they stood and watched. Maybe they really could hope for mutual destruction between the curses? If not that, the winner should come out with a fair bit of damage. Tino pressed her hands together and prayed. The ape suddenly broke his gaze and released a deafening roar. Its body shrank like a deflating balloon, and after a few seconds, the noble spirit from the clan house was standing there. Though this body was smaller, its presence had increased immensely. Perhaps the radiant power of that massive ape was now being condensed into this smaller frame. One part of a thief's job was gauging the strength of enemies. Though the ape's powers had been vague, she had a better picture now that that power had been condensed. Both had strength unlike anything Tino had ever seen, but when comparing the two, the noble spirit was far superior. She was confident that not even Murrin's lament could win this battle. The Black Knight swung at the curse's true form, but found himself pierced by an arm, one protruding from the noble spirit's abdomen. Form meant nothing to a curse, a manifestation of intense animus. It had free rein over shape and size. Murrin paused, then let out an even louder wail. The noble spirit slowly approached. Master, from where I'm standing, it looks like they're having a discussion. Yeah, Thinking back on it, weren't noble spirits experts in the hexen arts? That was why they were talking about bringing in a noble shaman to do something about Murrin's lament. The noble spirit turned towards Tino and her master. The arm piercing the Black Knight was removed, letting him stand back on his own feet again. He didn't appear damaged. Murrin's lament ceased her wailing and looked at Krai. The tangling evil auras began to form a single massive one. This is bad, Ansem groaned. Everyone was thinking the same thing. The curses weren't going to wipe each other out. Silently, Krai looked around before saying in a troubled voice, maybe they'll get along and we can call it a day? Does it look like that's going to happen? Murrin, the Black Knight, and the accursed noble spirit all attacked at once. Ansy and every member of Ark Braves moved to intercept them. This was bad. Even one of them was too much. Now there were 3 of them. Fortunately, they were after Krai. While on the run, they should be able to keep damage to a minimum. And they could use that time to think of a plan. Gripping her master's hand, Tino hopped aboard the drifting carpet. Fly, Carpe, she cried. Carpe took to the skies at high speed. Tino gripped her master's hand when the inertia nearly caused him to fall. I've got it, he said while dangling just like he had been earlier. Let's go to Citri. If she's not in one of her funny moods, she should be able to do something about this. I am trusting you, master. The curses chased after them. The noble spirit was the strongest among them, but Murrin's lament and the mysterious night of darkness were also immediate threats. Their blending miasmas formed a black cloud that ate into the skies over the imperial capital. She had been told of the ethereal phantoms that resided within treasure vaults, but Tino had precious little experience fighting such creatures. If these things were a lot weaker, then this might constitute a good experience for her, but this was far too much for her. Master, I think you're giving me too much credit. I'm a small fry. And if that fop couldn't kill these things, then how am I supposed to? While desperately steering Carpe, she looked at her master, dangling below her. Even now, he was his usual self. Did he have some plan that she couldn't begin to imagine? He usually did. She would always face imminent peril, only to barely make it out alive. Except knowing that didn't make a scary situation any less scary. It was her understanding that the line between life and death was something you weren't supposed to tread on a regular basis. It appeared a hero couldn't so much as slow these curses, much less defeat them. Heck, those stalwart barriers hadn't even drawn the curse's attention when it made a straight charge for Krai. There wasn't anything Tino could do about something like that. It sure is tough being Mr. Popular. Master, it's changing. Again. The ape from the church began to writhe and contort, its form shifting. Noble spirits were also known as guardians of the woods. In their settlements deep within forests, they would befriend flora and fauna alike and enlist their aid in defending their land. Noble spirits weren't prone to talking about themselves, but folklore had it that the best forest guardians went so far as to borrow the powers of monsters. Perhaps that borrowing of power entailed magical transformations? The curse's new form was that of a dragon, one black as pitch, a creature of darkness with blade-like wings. It was a few sizes smaller than the ape from earlier, but that didn't make Tino feel any better. With this form, it could now fly. The Black Knight and Murrin both rode atop its back. It sure was a novel sight. It's a dragon. It's a dragon. Think it can fly? Of course it could fly. It was a dragon, and not some goofy thing like that hot spring dragon, except the adult one was capable of flight. Surrounded by black clouds of miasma, the Stygian dragon spread its wings and took to the skies. The apocalyptic sight incited screams throughout the imperial capital. There was a good chance that even if they resolved this without serious damage, some irreversible harm had already been done. The knights were on the move, but for reasons unclear, there was a noticeable shortage of them. It's not like this dragon was something that could be brought down from the ground anyway. Tino suspected that, should her master's intended pre-to-human artifice fail and he end up dead, that still wouldn't placate that thing's anger. No doubt, her master held the fate of the imperial capital in his hands. Tino had to do anything she could. "Master, where should I take you?" "I'll take you anywhere you ask." "Oh, isn't that Citri over there?" "Chem." "Ah." Tino looked where her master was pointing. There was Siddy. She was just coming out of a shabby building not far from the main thoroughfare. It wasn't clear at first since she wore a rugged gas mask that covered her entire head, but it was definitely her. The man next to her must have been an alchemist from the Primus Institute. While steering Carpei, Tino searched her memories. What was that building again? Oh, that's right. She was pretty sure that was an entrance to the city's source. Monsters lived near the entrances of those terrifying labyrinthine canals. Tino could recall being very scared of them when she was a kid. Not many people ever entered the source, so what sort of business did Siddy have there? Either way, she went where her master indicated. Siddy was momentarily surprised by the sight of them suddenly arriving on the flying carpet, but she removed her gas mask and gave them a blossoming smile. "Krai, great timing. We were just investigating the water and ecosystems in the source. Down there, we made an incredible discovery. You see, we were hoping to conduct experiments on strawberry blaze." "HMPH. I've got a few things to say, but they can wait. Right now, I want to check the thrall potion's efficacy," said the older alchemist. His face was scrunched up in a grim expression. They said this after seeing Tino drenched in sweat atop the carpet, and Krai dangling below her. Did all alchemists get tunnel vision when something caught their eye? "Those 3 curses will be here any moment." "Why yeah," Krai said. He was equally as surprised at Tino. He didn't know what to say to Citri's joyous greeting. "Now, say it, master. Tell Siddy you want her to do something about those curses." Looking at Tino through half-lidded eyes, Siddy wrapped her arms around Krai, who was nonchalant as ever. It seemed she was none too pleased that Tino had come with him. But if she could see Tino's apparent panic and Krai dangling from the carpet, and yet still somehow think the two of them were on a date, then Siddy needed her eyes checked. As expected, the potion diluted and lost its efficacy, but we came upon an urban legend. "I'm sure you'll want to know about it, Krai. There was a dragon in the source. A sewage dragon. If strawberry blaze really works, then it should listen to you." "AA sewage, dragon?" The unfamiliar phrase caused Tino to freeze up. Hearing a roar from the Hexen dragon, Siddy looked up at the sky for the first time. Then, as though hitting on an idea, her master drove his hand into his palm. "Are you serious, master?" The human's plan was so foolish it wasn't even humorous, just irritating. If he thought he could fight off a noble spirit with another variety of curse, then humans really were fools, just as they always had been. However, there was evidence that this man was especially dim-witted. The 2 curses that man had unleashed were powerful, but they didn't stand a chance against it. It was clear that these 2 curses weren't at full power. By its estimate, These two had harbored stronger wills until recently. As a result of being put together, their rage had begun to dissipate. That much was clear by the way the knight stood protectively in front of the girl. Curses tended to weaken when their anguish faded and they lost a place to direct their anger. A true curse wouldn't bother trying to save another one. Normally, it would have just eaten the two curses. The only reason it instead made them its allies was to show that unperturbable man the depths of his own idiocy. The plan halfway succeeded, halfway failed. The man was surprised, but not afraid. Not only that, when he fled from the church, it had paused out of sheer startlement. The church should have been the man's best chance at victory. Unless there was still more to his plan. This rabble will come later. That's guaranteed. That man must not get away. It changed its form into one with wings, then let its two new servants upon its back before taking off in pursuit. However, setting aside the knight, the cursed girl didn't appear particularly bent on killing the man. Perhaps it was his lack of presence or will to fight. Maybe she pitied him. That man possessed a spirit remarkably average, but persistently showing no will to resist was the optimal way to deal with many curses. But that didn't matter. It simply roared with anger. Destroy that man and place a curse on his existence. Though a portion of its rage was no doubt caused by the power of the ring, it was still unequivocally wrong for a human to wear something crafted by a noble spirit. The man ran inside a stark, aging building. When the barriers of the church did nothing, why would he think a structure like that would do anything? It was about to blow the building down with a single breath when it sensed countless presences beneath the ground. Big things, little things. Bugs, small animals. In the jumble of life, there was the shine of a large one. The building shook, its metal gate flew off, and out came a dragon, one with filthy grey skin. It had a spiny back along with a hide tempered by polluted water. Being in the darkness for so long had caused its eyes to regress, leaving it inept at perceiving light. Following behind the dragon was a flood of rats, bats, ogrelings, and other common forest creatures. From the underground? Is he manipulating the subterranean creatures? Just what sort of technique would that? "Goo, sewage dragon," the man screamed from within the building. Though he was screaming, his voice did not hint at any will to fight. What in the world is he trying to do? This dragon wouldn't be any match for it. But it also didn't care for the idea of playing along with this man's plans. Noble spirits excelled at speaking with monsters, animals, and plants. It quickly pulled up before reverting to its original form. With nowhere to stand, the two other curses plummeted to the ground. Seeing it and the other two curses, the sewage-drenched dragon took a fearful step back. Siddy was beautiful, never lost her composure, and possessed very few flaws. However, this woman of exceptional genius tended to malfunction when dealing with Tino's master. Tino watched with uncertainty as the sewage dragon Sudra, for short, began its battle with the ultimate curse. She didn't know what Siddy had been doing, but she struggled to imagine they had any chance of winning this. This dragon might have been the subject of urban legends, but this curse was actually legendary. It had already proved itself beyond the capabilities of Antsi and Ark. Tino had never heard of a sewage dragon in the first place. Siddy had probably made the name up. Tino was a dyed-in-the-wool member of Team Krai, and she was acquainted with Siddy's skills, but she had to wonder if they really had any hope of victory here. Her master seemed to be having an oddly good time as he directed the sewage dragon. A short distance away, Siddy and the elderly alchemist were talking in hushed voices. "It won't be long until we can see firsthand the efficacy of Strawberry Blaze. Still, I don't know what those three are, but that's some fearsome miasma. Even if he releases every monster in the source, I'm not sure he can dash. It's fine. Krai should be able to make it work. Here, how about this? Perhaps if the sewage dragon and the other monsters get eaten, then the effects of the thrall potion will be transferred." Totally unaware of the situation, she sounded very confident. "Siddy, I don't think those curses will eat the sewage dragon. And wait, does this mean you realize the dragon can't win in a direct fight? If you said how about this, Then you don't actually know what Master is planning, do you? The sewage dragon, purportedly under Krai's control, appeared fearful of the curse. If Tino recalled correctly, that fiend of the saws didn't even attack large groups of people. How was it supposed to win against a curse that had taken Ark and his allies head-on? Siddy looked at Tino, who was praying for her master's preterhuman artifice, and said, "And if we really have to, we can use T, and if that fails, kill him as bait so we can get away. So we can regroup." Tino turned her head away from Siddy and her insane ideas. "I knew you didn't understand, Siddy. That thing is after Master. We have to find some way to fight it if we want to save him. If Tino or Kill Liam or anyone stayed behind, the curse would still pursue Krai." At Krai's orders, the sewage dragon and the other varied beasts that called the saws home all converged on the cursed noble spirit. And then they stopped a few meters short of their target. "Siddy, they're not going. It appears their instincts are bringing their bodies to a halt." Tino wondered how often you saw a battle where the imminent victor was this obvious. She didn't believe for a second that the curses could lose. She thought she would have stood a better chance. When the noble spirit advanced a step, the saw creatures retreated a step. It was terribly lopsided. As Tino expected, the noble spirit wasn't going to eat the sewage dragon. Not that she thought it would matter either way. No. That doesn't change the fact that Master chose to come here. He's pulled off miracles before. Maybe this specific dragon is the curse's weakness. "You can do it, sewage dragon. Gugyo." Hearing Krai's encouragement, the sewage dragon let out a roar in what seemed like an attempt to psyche itself up. However, it didn't take a single step forward. Seeing herself in that dragon, Tino became quite sad. Some things that can't be overcome through motivation alone. What's he trying to do? Her master gave the saw creatures a perplexed look. Then, for the first time, the noble spirit spoke. "Begone, weaklings." It was a voice icy enough to freeze the heart. Hearing it, the sewage dragon let out a roar that more resembled a scream before making a beeline to the decrepit building, then back into the saws. Similarly, the other critters followed after. Tino barely managed to dodge to the side and avoid being trampled by the pack that moved like a tidal wave. That wasn't even a fight. And wait, weren't they supposed to listen to Master? Krai himself was blinking in confusion. With a look of shock, Siddy turned to the alchemist next to her. "Nikolaf, as we anticipated, the cursed portion of the potion is having an effect. Did the stronger curse override it, removing the wedge? Or did the dilution weaken it? Now's not the time for analysis. Is there nothing else we can do?" The noble spirit looked at the remaining people and let out a derisive snort. From behind it, Murrin seemed awfully worried. "Is a curse taking pity on us?" A vial danced through the air. Siddy had thrown it. The container of silvery liquid landed right in front of the curse, breaking open. Then there was no sound. Tino's brain was rocked violently. She flew back, slamming into a wall. Seeing the hole in the ground and the crumbled wall, she finally understood what had happened. The potion had exploded. Siddy really went and used that in the middle of the city with no warning. Not only that, but the potion had gotten stronger since the vacation. Bearing the pain, Tino pulled herself up. Using the decrepit saw entrance as cover, Siddy followed up with more potions. "Take that, and that. When I heard it was curses this time around, I made purifying debt potions. This is their debut. Please control yourself, Siddy." Between the explosions, Tino heard not Murrin's lament, but rather Murrin's screams of terror. This seemed a bit too physical to be purification. Besides, not even Siddy's potions were going to kill that thing. Antsy had been helpless after all. Siddy was showing real bloodlust for someone who was probably aware of how little chance she had of victory. The last white potion went out, creating a column of smoke in an unnatural shade of white. It was a smoke bomb. Tino had a realization. Siddy plans to run away with Master. Tino wasn't having it. Sticking two fingers in her mouth, She whistled as loud as she could. In response, Krai flew from his hiding spot behind the building and over to her. There was no use staying here. As expected, Siddy couldn't salvage this. They didn't even get to watch a giant monster battle. Why did we come here, Master? She jumped atop the approaching Krai. Not slowing for a second, she dived into the smoke, grabbed her master's hand as he stood there imposingly, and pulled him up. Tino was operating at max capacity. Every cell in her body was working to manage this disaster. She now had an unprecedented understanding of her master's disposition and intensity, but still she had no choice but to pose the question. Master, where to next? She asked, clinging to the carpet and shaking him. Tino, when did you get so good with Krai? Master, they're coming after us again, even after we escaped through the smoke. Sensing something behind her, Tino spun around and saw a black mass exiting the smoke. The cloud had been thick enough that she could barely see a few centimeters in front of her, yet the curses knew exactly where they were. This confirmed Tino's suspicion that they weren't being tracked visually, but by some special power. God, were they persistent? Perhaps realizing it was inefficient to take a large form, it chased after them from atop a black bird. It moved even faster than its previous iterations. Though the curse hadn't taken any damage, it had evidently become even angrier. After having a sewage dragon let loose on it, then strange potions hurled at it, even a curse was going to be ticked off. Krai, faster. For some reason, Krai had a distant look in his eyes. At Tino's orders, Krai sped up. She didn't know how fast they were going, but a gap was forming between them and the curses. This would buy them a bit of time. Tino had become quite adept at steering the carpet. She wondered how great that might have felt if they weren't in the middle of an emergency. Still, that encounter with Siddy should have made her aware of what was happening. If they held out long enough, maybe she would come up with some sort of countermeasure. And just as this thought crossed Tino's mind, her eyes flew open. Could it be? Was that what he was trying to accomplish? All right, Tino, her master said, hanging from the carpet, we're going to Lucia next. Off to the Zabrudia Academy of Magic. Lucia should be able to do something, and Professor Sage is there as well. The pyromaniac lady might be there too. Master, okay. We'll go. Lucy. It wasn't hard to imagine that maybe Lucy and the Abyssal Inferno could do something. What's more, she had heard that Sage Cluster, the Undying, had noble spirit blood in her. They might find a clue that leads to victory. Master, don't be angry, but shouldn't we have headed there first? Holy shit. This curse was so insane it barely felt real. I thought I might be having a strange dream or something. Enjoying the flight, I watched with a faint smile as the noble spirit chased us from atop a bird. Everything was happening at a dizzying pace, a sensation I hadn't felt in a while. I couldn't believe there was something Ansem and Ark couldn't defeat. Hugh had made one hell of a find. Where in the world did he get that box? Making Murrin and the Black Knight fight the curse seemed like a good idea at the time, but it ended up working against us. When I heard I could control the sewage dragon, I thought I might have something, but that, too, fell flat. Nothing was working. And what even is a sewage dragon anyway? But no matter how dangerous the situation, it didn't change what I could do. And that was nothing. Tino had at some point become an expert carpet commander. Even though he would always ignore me, he jumped at the opportunity to follow Tino's orders. What an absurd relic. I decided to have a chat with him once this was over. It probably wasn't easy, but Krai was just managing to stay ahead of the noble spirit. Even with my eyesight, I could see the glare on its face. Man, that's one angry noble spirit. With nothing else to do, I took a close look at the source of this mess, the wooden ring that attracted curses. It's a silly thing to think about a relic, but I really wondered how this thing worked, if it could demand the undivided attention of a curse that was intelligent enough to speak. There were plenty of relics that attracted things, but this one was baffling. Which reminds me, Ketchachaka could attract dragons. Of course, I wasn't going to blame Tino for this, even if she was the one who gave me this ring. She had good intentions and had risked her own safety to obtain it. The fault was with me, as I was the one who put it on without thinking. I made a perfunctory attempt to remove the ring. And it moved. No resistance at all. Heh! I stared in bewilderment. I looked up at Tino, checked the ring, then carefully watched our pursuer. It wasn't hard to guess why the ring had moved. It must have run out of mana. It couldn't have had much to begin with. I had next to no mana, and with nothing to give, it didn't matter if this relic was capable of siphoning from its user. The question is, when did the mana run out? I couldn't get it off during Mathis's appraisal, nor when I examined it at the clan house. Regardless, if I tossed the ring aside, the curse should stop chasing me. What luck! But just as I was about to ditch it, I realized that if I threw this ring away, wouldn't the curse start attacking the city? The one silver lining here was that as long as the curse was after me, the rest of the capital would at least be safe. Ansem and Ark may have failed to stop it, but first-rate hunters like them should be able to find a solution if given enough time. And though the curse was fast, Carpet Master Tino could outrun it. Even if I throw the capital under the bus, then I'll end up cursed as well. And I can ditch the ring at any time. I guess we have only one option. Tino, I've got a great idea. How about we do a loop around the world on this carpet? Master, what are you talking about? She screamed in response. For the time being, I wanted to be let onto the carpet so I wouldn't have to keep hanging. But maybe I was asking too much. Was there some trick to riding it? I made sure the mana-depleted ring was snug on my finger, then took a look at the noble spirit. I couldn't tell if it had realized the ring was out of charge. I mean, I thought it was kind of odd that it was still chasing me even though it was out of mana, but I figured I should just focus on drawing its attention. What do I do? What do I do? Here, for now, I'll wave. Hoping for love and peace, I put on a smile and waved my hand enthusiastically. The noble spirit's expression stiffened. Behind it, for reasons beyond me, Murrin's lament was rapidly shaking her head. The Black Knight raised his sword over his head. He was totally planning to hurl it at me. Don't bother. I've still got 3 safety rings left. Give it up. Just as I shrugged my shoulders with resignation, a tornado of flames shot up from the ground and enveloped the noble spirit. There was a light as blinding as the sun, and she felt an intense heat behind her. Tino's eyes bulged when she saw the sudden fire-laden twister erupting from below. Though Lucy could manage fierce water attacks, fire magic was generally the strongest of spells that involved manipulating nature. The ability to reduce anything to ash meant fire spells were tricky things that required careful consideration of one's surroundings, making it an element most hunters kept at arm's length. Nonetheless, there was one magus in the imperial capital known for her use of fire magic. Down below, Tino saw the buildings of the Zebrudia Academy of Magic, still damaged, still in the process of restoring their barriers. The tornado had come from its expansive courtyard. The abyssal inferno. The words spilled from Tino's lips. She's really here. Oh. Her master sounded impressed by the crimson tornado, a sight both beautiful and terrifying. These might be curses radiating miasma, but it still took a real fiend to unleash an offensive spell without making any sort of confirmation. Tino now understood why the abyssal inferno was colloquially referred to as a witch. Being a level 8, her insanity was still not quite to the same degree as Tino's master. He. There was a cackle from the courtyard. Flesh, bones, blood to ashes, burn it all. Tino had heard that the reason the abyssal inferno, subject of so many legends for her conflagratory powers, hadn't yet been arrested was because she supposedly incinerated any evidence of her wrongdoing. Those were just rumors, but they were frightful all the same. However, curses weren't living. They didn't even necessarily have corporeal forms. A spell would do some damage, but this was why purifying curses was generally left to the church. A magus of the abyssal inferno's caliber must have known this, too. The noble spirit burst out from the fiery tornado. As Tino expected, the spell had done next to nothing, but now the curse's eyes were turned up in anger. Its cheeks twitched, and it was about to open its mouth when a dragon of pure flame began to bite at the three curses. Even Tino found it a bit off-putting. She used 2 top-class offensive spells in a row without thinking about what effect they might have. Her staff does her thinking for her, doesn't it? The Abyssal Inferno seemed to think that if something wasn't catching fire, then you should toss flames until it did. Biting down on the noble spirit, the vermilion dragon carved an erratic pattern through the sky. Like the previous attack, this attracted the attention of the people of the imperial capital, although perhaps for different reasons. That was when Lucy made a gallant appearance atop her broom. Her robe billowed in the wind, and she appeared in an even worse mood than usual. She reached a height that put her on eye level with Krai as he dangled from the carpet, then matched their speed. "Brother," she screamed. "What have you brought with you?" "I dunno, I just thought you might be able to do something about it." "Hhuuh. Damn it. You always. Thank you for always shouldering so much, Lucy." The noble spirit broke free from the dragons, then, with eyes opened as wide as they could go, it charged at Krai. The bird seemed to be fine, which meant it probably wasn't corporeal. The noble spirit was losing control. Even Murrin and the Black Knight seemed to cower before its anger. That's right. Noble spirits from the forests generally don't care for fire spells. It was the one weakness of a race that otherwise excelled in arcane matters. This was probably due to the potential risk of forest fires. Noble spirits seldom used fire spells and weren't very fond of the element as a whole. Besides, anyone would get mad if someone suddenly bathed them in flames. Hey, why is it coming at us when the Abyssal Inferno is the one who cast those spells? Brother, get to a building. Lucy turned in a wide arc, not hesitating to put herself in front of the curse. Antsy and Siddy had also fearlessly impeded the curse, but Tino still thought Lucy was being incredibly bold. She didn't think she could do the same. Still on her broom, Lucy raised her right hand. The bracelet on her wrist began to shine brightly. The wind moved in a circular motion, fluttering the edges of her robe. She had formed a small vortex. It gradually shaped itself into an immense dragon that was then let loose on the three curses. Murrin unleashed waves of umbra, but the dragon swallowed up both those and the curses. It was an even greater spectacle than Siddy tossing explosives everywhere. Suddenly, a shimmering crimson light shot up from below. It hit the water dragon, igniting it like firewood doused in oil. "Ha ha ha. Burn to the ground." "My apologies, Krai. Our centimeters a little excited and burn happy after obtaining ashes from that Black World tree from the other day." Next to the Abyssal Inferno and bowing his head was a familiar magus, Art Baron of Hidden Curse. He seemed to be having a stressful day. Krai smiled and waved to Art Baron before looking up at Tino. "Tino, let's head to that huge building." "Why yes, Master." Following his orders, she maneuvered Carpe, fleeing to a large building that had many magi gathered outside. After making a smooth landing in front of the building, still holding his hand, they pushed through the crowd of still confused magi, then shoved open the double doors. The building appeared to be a lecture hall. Inside were even more magi, and in the center was a jet black staff placed atop a pedestal. Tino couldn't help but gasp. Though she couldn't see mana like magi could, she had a thief's sense of smell. She didn't need to be a magus to tell that the staff housed considerable power. "Master, could it be?" "Yes. You knew about this staff." Tino began to recall the magical prowess her master had demonstrated back at the Supreme Warrior Festival. No, that was that fake master. But it only stood to reason that the real one would be better than the imposter. Besides, even if it wasn't the real Krai that fought Krahi, it was definitely the real Krai that had stopped that monstrous relic sword. Was this day going to be the day his heretofore hidden powers would be made visible for all to see? Tino gulped as she watched her master approach the staff. As he approached the staff, he didn't so much as move his legs. He stood where he was, blinking as he looked around at the surrounding magi. Master, we need to hurry," Tino offered hesitantly. That was when the roof fell in. Rubble rained down as the water dragon broke through, piercing the center of the hall. The Academy Magi screamed and fled like little spiders. Though they were talented, they had very little combat experience. Tino quickly pulled her master away from any falling debris. Was it a sign that she had become desensitized if she thought the loss of a single lecture hall was a fine price to pay for defeating this curse? Unfortunately, she could still sense it somewhere. While Tino gently pulled Carpe closer, she saw black lights rise like steam from the crater that had been gouged by the water dragon. Another failed attempt. Her suspicions were proving true. Mere magic wouldn't be enough to bring this thing down. If Tino's senses were to be believed, the power housed in those lights hadn't changed at all. How in the world does Master plan to defeat this? Tino began to steady her breath, but before she could even finish, Lucy entered through the gaping hole in the ceiling. She had grown ears and a tail quite similar to those of a fox. Light emitted from the bracelets on her wrists. Her outline wavered, then there was more than one of her. Tino had heard about this. It was a cloning technique used by Telm the Counter-Cascade, the traitor that had been uncovered during the trip to the conference. Perhaps Lucy had heard of this spell and recreated it. Surrounding the crater, the small host of Luces began an incantation. Light appeared in a wide radius above the hole as they took shape. Swords formed from water. Dozens of them, each radiating fearsome mana. Lucia had a nigh-infinite supply of mana, but there was a tinge of red on her cheeks. She must have been really pushing herself. The rising umbral aura fluctuated, the curses floated up from the hole. All at once, Lucy unleashed the blades, hurling them with the velocity of a bullet. The curse's look of hatred changed to one of shock before the incoming blades sent its thin body flying back. It was then that Tino became certain that only a sliver of energy was housed in that curse's body. Perhaps aware of this, perhaps not, Lucy continued her flurry of swords. The noble spirit tried to evade them, but they were too fast to permit that. Water magic was known for lacking lethality, but this encounter suggested to Tino that maybe it was just a matter of skill. Each individual attack shaved off only a little of the curse's power, but the blades were copious. It didn't take an expert to guess that this downpour of swords wasn't a spell meant to be used on only a few targets. The ground shook with each hit, digging a massive pit inside the lecture hall. The few Magi who hadn't fled stood in amazement at the brutal might on display. Oh, Lucia, that's awesome. Go, went Krai's unencouraging cheers. Ardit, I don't care. Please. Just stand back, brother, she shouted at him, red in the face. It was true enough that magic was more effective against curses than physical attacks were. Still, Tino felt like Lucy's powers and repertoire must be expanding all the time if she could now wear down a legendary curse that even the Church of the Radiant Spirit couldn't purify. Ugh. Urgic. The series of attacks had destroyed the floor and blown the noble spirit away. The Black Knight and Murrin had also been helpless against the onslaught. Is this actually going to work? Having once been hit by arc, the noble spirit had now been engulfed by light for the second time today. The cursed being's gaze suddenly stopped on one spot, the black staff. It had been placed on a pedestal, but the shockwaves from Lucy's attacks had sent it tumbling off. The moment it saw the staff, its face contorted in surprise. Then the black lights around it faded out. Its expression became blank. Tino had lost count of how many times she had felt a foreboding chill down her spine today. Sensing something, Lucy halted her attacks. Trembling from head to toe, the noble spirit touched the staff. Chem, don't tell me, are we in trouble? Master? Oh, this. The noble spirit's face twisted violently. It wasn't showing the enmity it had earlier, but Tino was still certain that this was the calm before the storm. It said nothing, but it was angry. Tino was the master of all things concerning her master. She had already gathered information regarding the previous curse troubles. They said a fake world tree had gone on a rampage at the academy and destroyed one of the buildings. It ended when the abyssal inferno had burned it down. Then the ashes left behind had been divided and doled out due to their value as a magic tool ingredient. Knowing that, Tino could guess what was happening. Her experience with the 1,000 trials hadn't been for nothing. The noble spirits considered the world tree to be divine. They had a distinct culture and a disdain for all that they considered unclean. This curse seemed to still hold onto a vestige of its previous self. Just how would such an individual react to the sight of an imitation world tree? The staff floated up, and the curse's hand then wrapped around it. The temperature plummeted in the blink of an eye. An imitation of the world tree, it said in a voice that echoed like the depths of hell. Made by humans? Lowly humans? What? What is this? The voice's sheer savagery held Tino in place for a second. The noble spirit's short hair wavered as it grew, pulsating as though driven by its anger. Lucy frantically let out another volley of swords, which the hair swatted away. The strength of a curse was said to be proportionate to the strength of the feelings that drove it. Right now, it was showing a murderous, violent, heart-stopping fury. Tino only needed to move a finger to reach Krai, but the circumstances wouldn't permit his use. The noble spirit's speech was no longer fragmented. Its eyes looked past Lucy, to Tino. Or rather, to her master, standing next to her. The look in its eyes went beyond intimidation. It was like nothing else in this world. Krai shivered and said, "Is it just me, or is it a bit cold in here? Is now the time to BHM? I can move." An interjection true to her heart had restored Tino's freedom of movement. The curse's earlier form was already remarkable. Tino didn't think Lucy could do anything now that it had changed. Luckily, the curse's attention wasn't on Lucy. Tino brushed against Krai, grabbed her master's arm, and jumped aboard. With swift movements and exceptionally good judgment, Krai grasped Tino's intentions and rocketed off. Sensing fury unlike anything else Tino had ever felt, they flew from the lecture hall. On their way out, they passed by the abyssal inferno. They made eye contact. Behind them, Tino heard howling winds, which she assumed was Lucy casting a spell. The abyssal inferno showed no surprise at the sight of them. She simply grinned and raised her staff. Lambent Ashbringer. Tino felt a searing wind blow against her back. A barricade of wind had been put up to cut the curses off from Tino and Krai, and was now absorbing the abyssal inferno's black flames, transforming it into a wall of fire. Lucy must have guessed that the curse was fixated on Krai, as she had switched from an offensive approach to one of detainment. Can always count on Lucy, Tino thought as she let out a sigh of relief. That was when a lance of eerie light burst through the wall of fire and struck her master. It flashed black and white, unlike anything Tino had ever seen. For just a moment, she spied the noble spirit's face through the gap in the wall. Smoldering with rage, its eyes burned bright, its grand smile wishing for her master's demise. The terror of it caused her to freeze up. If that face had been directed at her, Tino would never again be able to go to the bathroom by herself at night. "I guess that leaves one more," her master whispered abruptly, a hard-boiled look on his face. "Huh? One what? And what's going on in your body if you took that hit without any damage?" After so many similar instances, Tino no longer thought much of it when her master took a hit and remained unscathed, but if that lance had hit her, there wouldn't be an inch of her left. How did that make sense? She felt a renewed sense of horror at her master's aberrancy. "Tino," he said very seriously, "this is our final operation. Let's head for Luke." "Who? What for? What's going on? Why go to Luke now? He'd be the least useful." No. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself, Tino Shade. He won't be of much use here, but right now, you're just a transporter. Think. At least try to guess Master's intent. "You understood," she said after a brief silence. She was struggling with this. "Am I understanding correctly, Master? You're saying that Luke's sword will cut open the future?" He seemed perplexed by this idea. "No, it's just, Luke's the only one left. Master, there's also Lizzie. Man, I was so sure Ears and Tail Lucia would be able to manage something. Now what am I gonna do? I had lost whatever faith I had in myself. Besides, the only reason I had survived every brush with danger so far was my friends. If they couldn't solve this, then there was nothing I could do. The curse was still pursuing us with its usual dogged persistence. If there was one thing I could be happy about, it was that its answer was no longer being directed solely at me. I had burned through a safety ring when it glared at me, and another when it struck me after breaking through the flame wall, leaving me with only one left. It's easy to be taken aback by the idea that its glare was enough to trigger a safety ring. However, if you'll recall, Ketchachaka yelling and stomping his feet on that airship had been enough to steadily burn through my stock. I suppose curses were just capable of things like that. There was a moment where I thought Lucia's attacks might actually put an end to the curse, but when I turned and looked back at it, it looked strong as ever. This was all due to that weird black staff in the lecture hall. Until the curse touched that staff, Lucia had been pushing it back. But everything had been upended, all because of the staff. The black bird glided through the sky after us, the translucent noble spirit on its back. Behind it were the Black Knight and Murrin's Lament, who held the staff aloft. Meanwhile, we had Carpe, Carpet Rider Tino, and me dangling like bait. They definitely had the advantage here. Maybe they'll forgive me if I grovel. There was only more straw for us to grasp at, and that was Luke. Even I didn't think using a sword to cut a curse would be easy, but this was where the process of elimination left us. Well, there were also Liz and Eliza, but I didn't know where they were. I found it interesting that Professor Sage hadn't been back at the academy. There were so many other Magi there, so where the hell was she? Honestly, she was never around when I needed her, and always around when I didn't want her there. Suddenly, I spotted Arnold in the clamoring crowds below. He and his large party were all looking up at us in disbelief. With so few options available, I tried asking him for help. "Arnold, can you do something about that?" "Ah." It seemed he was incapable of responding. We continued, passing right over his head. Shouldn't he be more accustomed to tricky situations, being level 7 and all? I swear, some people. So where was Franz during all this havoc? Wasn't he supposed to keep the imperial capital safe? It wasn't right now. I had even returned his sounding stone at the worst possible time. Honestly, every last one of them. Figuring there was no point just dangling from the carpet, I started yelling. If I called, someone might respond. I didn't want to cause a scene, but my back was against the wall. "Franz. Captain Franz of the Zero Order, help me. Master. The capital is in danger, Franz. Hurry. There's a crazy curse. Things aren't looking good. I'll kill you, I'll kill you, I'll kill you," the noble spirit screamed while chasing after us. It was moving freakishly fast, but Carpe was just able to stay ahead. "Carpe, dodge." Following Tino's brilliant orders, Carpe dodged the incoming arrow of light. With only one safety ring, I was incredibly grateful that we had evaded the projectile. It's just, I wanted to be the one to give the order, you know? I still couldn't even ride on top, yet Tino was mastering incredible textile techniques. It wasn't fair. After a few more minutes of fleeing for our lives, we reached the Sword Saint's dojo, the one Luke had previously cleaved in two. In the courtyard, dozens of the renowned swordsman's apprentices were all swinging swords. "That's right. He said something about training to beat a curse, didn't he? Man, I'm on fire today." Obvious desperation. Maybe the esteemed Sword Saint would be able to cut through the curse. I heard he had been able to overpower the Devil Sword. When the students noticed us, they began chattering and pointing in our direction. This might be fun if it were just Tino and me, but we had 3 curses chasing after us. Soln stared with bulging eyes. Next to him, Luke showed a similar reaction. "Soln, Luke," I hollered at them. "It's up to you." "What?" "Leave it to me, Krai. Row." Moving on pure reflex, Luke dashed forward. He probably hadn't even thought much about what it was he was taking. That's just the sort of man my childhood friend, Luke Psychor, was. Tino ordered the carpet to descend. With his absurdly high attributes, Luke dashed past us and leapt into the air. Master! Luke! That's a wooden sword. Row! Thinking only of killing me, the noble spirit was momentarily stunned when it saw Luke closing in. Murrin trembled with fright. Luke cut through an incoming arrow of light. The arrow had broken his sword in half, but that didn't stop him from swinging the sword in a vertical, bisecting slash. Tino looked with astonishment. I was at a loss for words. However, the most surprised of all of us was the individual who got cut, the noble spirit. The two halves of the noble spirit instantly stuck together. Ah! Luke cried. It reattached. I'm still an amateur. Hardly. I guess this thing really is non-corporeal. If anything, I'm surprised you could cut it with a wooden sword when Lucia's magic and Ansem's purifications had done next to nothing. Luke tossed aside the remaining half of his wooden sword. What? The noble spirit said, vaguely rubbing where it had been cut. What are you? Oh, it's a knight. Why your sword? Luke exclaimed. From where I stood, Luke looked more like a curse than the noble spirit. His gaze swept around, then settled on the devil sword next to the sword saint. A new sword. I'm gonna cut and kill. The noble spirit caught onto his plan and held out an arm. With a light rattle, the devil sword shook, then floated into the curse's open hand. Solm made a face that said, "Oh damn it." Luke's manic assault must have distracted him. The noble spirit handed the sword off to the Black Knight. Then it looked at me, almost as if it just remembered I was there. How dare you, human, to release such a deranged creature on me dash. I guess I owe you an apology. Did Siddy use Luke as a reference when making Killiam's call? Yeah, Luke can do some pretty incomprehensible things, and lots of people find it pretty terrifying. Maybe out of shock, the black aura around the curse is weakened. If Luke was able to make that thing recoil, then maybe it didn't know what to do about people beyond its comprehension. I'll kill you all. May humanity suffer for all eternity. This curse was acting a lot more human-like than when we first saw it. If anything, this made it less intimidating. At first, I was terrified because there was no telling what it might do, but if it was just going to rampage around, then it was no different than a monster. Except its power was on a whole different level. After swiping a sword from a nearby classmate, Luke went at the noble spirit. It pointed a hand downward. The ground beneath Luke's feet began to dissolve into a muddy substance that covered his legs. You dare catch me by surprise, you damn inferior being. I guess Luke had really frightened the noble spirit. It raised its arms up, then swung them down. From the skies above fell a volley of black lances that formed a sort of cage. Man, those gaps are pretty narrow. They could open them up just a bit, and Luke would still be trapped. A sea cage befits an inferior being. You can stay there forever. Gee god damn it. Luke gripped the mysterious lances, and, unconcerned that his wands were being burned and his legs buried, he tried to climb the bars of his cage. Panicking, the noble spirit quickly began to make a roof over him. Wretched beast. The noble spirit was really heating up. I'll ensure you never hold a sword ever again. Tino, having never even gotten off Carpe this time, held out her hand for me. Master, let's run while we can. Somehow, this had gone better than I had expected, but Luke ultimately wasn't able to defeat the curse either. I mean, of course he couldn't. You can't kill a curse with a sword. It's not even worth considering. Carpe ascended rapidly. Once again, I dangled below as we put the chaotic dojo behind us. Though Luke was unable to slay the curse, he did buy us some much-needed time. I saw no sign of the noble spirit behind us. He set the record for time spent holding it off. There was something funny about the idea that Luke had detained it longer than Lucia, Ansem, or anyone else. We soared over the imperial capital at a pace a bit slower than before. All the mayhem had numbed me a bit to the danger, but we were nonetheless in the middle of a crisis. Looking down, I could see that the city had been thrown into disorder. The black clouds that had wrapped about the curse had now spread over the imperial capital. Maybe that prophecy Franz mentioned wasn't a metaphor? Master, Tino asked after taking deep breaths, what's our next step? Next? I dunno. That was my last idea. The only idea I had left was to keep the curse at bay until Lapis's party arrived with the noble shaman, and bet everything on them. It's just that we probably didn't have that sort of time. If we kept using Krai to flee, mana was going to become an issue. Depending on their capabilities, the amount of mana consumed by a flying carpet varied. Capri had fairly high specs, meaning he also needed a fair amount of mana. Therefore, Tino couldn't charge him, and needless to say, neither could I. Frantically working my brain, I put on a smile and spoke in a soothing voice. What do you think we should do, Tino? For now, we needed to buy time. We'd do that and wait for someone to save us. That was our best option. This city wasn't lacking exceptional hunters and magi and the like. There were probably some shaman mixed in there as well. There was a good chance Ark and company were thinking up a plan at this very moment. I prayed that they were. After groaning to herself, Tino's eyes flew open like she had come up with something. Her hair was stuck to her cheeks, her ribbons stained black. The fact that she still had energy after all this tumult was downright incredible. Her training was paying off wonderfully. She said hesitantly, looking at me with upturned eyes, perhaps this isn't what you were hoping for, Master. But if I may, how about we seal the curse inside Mimikry? I didn't say anything. I was too shocked to even let it show on my face. That's it. Mimikry was a fine piece capable of holding dozens of missing persons. I was fairly certain there was no way to exit from the outside, since the exit showed up only when the lid was opened. This meant I would never be able to open the lid ever again, but I would have to live with that. I could shut the curse in there, then return it to the church's care. Is Tino a genius? I should be the one calling her master. We still had some things to work out, but this was way better than no plan at all. We now had a glimmer of hope. Starting now, I was Tino Master. I don't know what this means. Man, Tino, you're a genius, I said. Except it's locked. You mean my ideas, right? I can open that lock. Let's get to the clan house, she said with shining eyes. Good grief, this all started there, and now it's gonna end there. Doesn't this mean we should have just used Mimikry back when the curse first appeared? Tino started to bank Krai. The relic's movements were a bit sluggish compared to before, suggesting he was low on mana. Just as we were about to make for the clan house, I felt a freezing wind on my back. From far in the distance, a thundering voice hammered down on us. I'll kill you. Kill you, kill you, kill you, Krai Andrey. I'll remember your name, you lowly, insolent human scum. Eek! Tino screamed. Back in the direction of the dojo writhed a voluminous darkness. It had a presence infinitely more ominous than the leaden clouds hanging over the imperial capital. Our dear assailant had completely snapped. The curse no longer rode atop a black bird, instead commanding the darkness itself. The phrase raging tempest came to mind. Riding the umbral wave, the cursed noble spirit came after us. Not that it had ever held back, but this thing was serious now. Krai, speed up! Tino frantically cried when she noticed that the curse was outpacing us. Krai tried his best to do as ordered. Oddly endearing as it was, we weren't going any faster. With the Queen of Curses closing in on us from atop subjugated darkness, Tino desperately banged on the carpet. Why? Krai, more speed. Maybe he's out of mana? Eep. Even if we make it to the clan house in one piece, is Tino gonna be able to get the lock open in time? Captain Franz, contact from the Imperial capital, reported an underling. It appears there was an attack after we made our departure. HMPH. So I was right, Franz replied with a gruff look. I prepared for this. Ark Rodin and many other formidable hunters have been stationed at the Church of the Radiant Spirit. The preparations to receive the noble shaman were proceeding smoothly. They already had knights stationed in towns that extended up to forests inhabited by noble spirits. They also had the assistance of someone familiar with their culture, Professor Sage Cluster of the Zebrudia Academy of Magic. Franz's job was to bring the shaman to the imperial capital and get Murrin's lament purified as soon as possible. As powerful as Nine-Tailed Shadowfox was, they were still an organization of humans. They would never be able to break past a barrier composed of the Argent Thunderstorm, the Immutable, and other capable hunters. "It seems your reading was right for once, sir," complimented Chris, the one from Starlight who had also been on the trip to the conference. "I've been outdone one too many times to let it happen again." Learning from the time the airship crashed, Franz had done a splendid job reading that clownish man's intentions. "No, you see," the underling said while looking back and forth between Chris and Captain Franz. "They say there's been considerable damage to the imperial capital. And the Thousand Tricks is shouting Captain Franz's name while being chased around by multiple curses." "Ha!" Franz said after a pause. He didn't mean to speak in such a low voice. He couldn't help but glare at the underling, yet they showed no hint of retracting their report. Franz couldn't understand it. Even should the nigh unthinkable happen and the imperial capital come to harm, what could possibly result in the Thousand Tricks being chased around while shouting Franz's name? And his being chased around by a curse? Franz was too baffled to say anything. That was when Lapis snorted and entered the conversation. "H, looks like you've been outdone again. Now, let's hear the details." Shit. Tino desperately steered the carpet across the skies of the imperial capital. Her heart pounded like it was going to burst out of her chest. If she had a mirror, she'd probably look paler than she ever had in her life. Behind them, the noble spirit pursued them with the momentum of an avalanche. Constant crumbling noises were accompanied by tremors, rocking her brain. She was sure the city was getting fairly battered through all this, but Tino didn't have the luxury to worry about something like that. If this curse caught them, they would be killed. If her master died, then there would be nobody left to protect the imperial capital. Having so far carried them like a zephyr, Carpe was starting to slow down. The clan house was right in front of them, but would they make it? She didn't need to turn around to know that the curse was closing in. It wasn't long ago that they had the advantage of speed, but they were up against a foe of bottomless stamina. Tino's throat was dry. She hadn't endured a trial in some time, and as usual, it was far too brutal to feel like a trial of any sort. "Master," she cried, "if they're going to catch us." I didn't wanna use this, but I guess I've got no choice." Hounding chain, shooting ring. Almost as if to make a mockery of Tino's fears, her master began riling up the noble spirit. No, that's not it, master. I wanted you to reassure me." The curse didn't bother to block the incoming chain and magic projectiles, instead letting them both bounce off. It let out a roar, the miasma around it growing a magnitude denser. Human. Tino heard a snapping sound, as though the world were being destroyed. The buildings around them rumbled as they fell apart. She had no idea a curse could cause this much physical damage. Some primal fear told her that if she stopped now, she would be frozen, unable to move ever again. Duty. Her sense of duty was the only thing keeping her going. Her master was being attacked because of the ring she had given him. She had to do whatever was necessary to get them to the clan house, then unlock Mimicky. Though she had been trained to be able to pick locks no matter the situation, she honestly didn't have much confidence she could get Mimicky open in an instant, not under these circumstances. The lock wasn't all that complicated, but considering the speed of the curse, she would have next to no time to work with. At worst, she might have the span of a breath. Generously, she might have 10 seconds. Frankly, she felt her master had far too much faith in her. But she couldn't tell him she wasn't up to it. She had already said she would do it. She concentrated. She pushed away any thoughts of their pursuer, stopped her trembling, and steadied her breath. Lockpicking was an easy task under normal circumstances. This would work. There was that relic, Evolve Greed, the one that drew out her potential. If she had it on her, she would have gladly put it on. But there was no use wishing for what she didn't have. She caught her first sighting of the clan house, where this would all be settled. The memory of Hugh arriving with that box felt like something from the distant past. Fly into the lounge, get off the carpet, open the chest. Fly into the lounge, get off the carpet, open the chest. Fly into the lounge, get off the carpet, and open the chest. She muttered her course of action to herself. This would work. By all means, it should. Believe in victory, Tino Shade. Show Master how much you've grown from all his trials. She could see the broken lounge window. Thanks to Carpeus' valiant efforts, they had made it this far without being caught. She got ready to jump. She looked at the clan house with fierce determination, when they suddenly began to fall. Carpei. The carpet was rapidly losing speed. He had run out of mana. Tino realized it too late. She felt the abrupt pull of gravity. She saw the lounge far above her. They still had some propulsion, but not nearly enough height. She had failed. She should have bailed from Carpei the moment they had gotten close enough. She had only been thinking about opening the lock and had completely overlooked this. They fell. Her master's eyes bulged. Malign waves hit them from behind. Tino was about to scream when something solid hit her from below. She coughed. She felt the heavy impact deep in her bones. It was something she was well acquainted with. Mostly on reflex, she tightened her grip on Master's hand. The strike from below sent her hurtling upward. In her peripheries, there was a flash of pink hair. There. Now hurry and get your clumsy ass in there. Thank you so much, Lizzie. She felt no pain. Her mind was focused elsewhere. She surrendered herself to the momentum as they flew into the lounge. Her master bounced across the floor, ending up on the ground not far from Mimikyu. "Zero," he said with a grandiose, forced smile. Tino didn't have time to think about what he meant by that. Having followed them in, the noble spirit landed on the floor. Tino sprinted to where Mimikyu lay in the center of the lounge. "Open the lock. Open the lock. Open the lock." She didn't think about anything else. Darkness cloaked the noble spirit's feet. It covered the floor, the walls, and the ceiling. It closed in on Tino. She was done for. She wasn't going to have enough time to open the chest. Despite these lurking doubts, she couldn't just give up without trying. She reached the treasure chest, and her eyes flew open when she was met by yet another surprise. It's unlocked. The lock lay on the floor. She opened the lid, revealing a pit dark as the underworld. Lizzie. Lizzie must have figured out what was going on and opened the chest up. Picking locks is her job. Just as this thought crossed her mind, Tino was struck by a shocking realization. Can we get the noble spirit inside Mimikyu? It's over. Human. Never have I met anyone so loathsome as you. The curse was too level-headed to end up in the chest by accident. She could lift the chest and charge at the curse with it, but Tino wasn't delusional enough to think that would work. She looked at her master. He was blinking, almost as if expecting something. Even under these circumstances, he was, as always, God. If possible, Tino would have liked to receive his blessing. With a demonic expression, the noble spirit walked towards them. The next moment, Murrin and the Black Knight popped out from behind and got in its way. Murrin looked less lamenting and more like she wanted to cry. The Black Knight's expression was hidden behind his helmet, but he was probably feeling the same way. Though these two were pretty powerful by human standards, they were definitely a few grades lower than the fiend standing before them. Seeing Murrin raise her staff and the Black Knight ready his blade, the noble spirit furrowed its brow. And did nothing more. It happened without warning. From behind, Murrin's lament and the black were knocked to the side by black tentacles, then swallowed up with frightening speed. It was over before Tino could even blink, and she was a thief. The two curses probably didn't even realize what had happened to them. The remaining curse, the strongest of them, looked at Krai. Its cheek twitched, and it spoke in a quiet voice. Pathetic. Worthless. Did your weakness resonate with them? Were they bound by sentiment? Was that your final move, Krai Andrey? Krai had once said that because all noble spirits were beautiful, they except for Chris were scary when enraged. Indeed, the face before them was too captivating and too horrifying to feel like anything from their own world. Krai held a hand over his mouth and took a step back. Ah, how could you? And to your allies at that. Even he had been caught off guard there. Or perhaps the sight had simply overwhelmed him. Then he tripped on the open mimicry, falling backwards into the chest. The noble spirit looked on in silence. Its eyes met Tino's. She couldn't help but shake her head. Oh, I get it now, Master. My job is to pull you out of there. I can do that, no problem. As long as I don't get killed. The noble spirit's shoulders trembled, its form flickering. Then. I'll kill you. You dare mock me. It let out a roar. With a shock that twisted her insides, Tino's legs gave out beneath her. The noble spirit's form fell apart, turning into a viscous black liquid. Unable to even scream, Tino watched the liquid cascade into mimicry like a raging torrent. Tino was slow to react to this unexpected development. No, even if she hadn't been, she didn't have the power to resist it. Though she wasn't the liquid's target, being near the chest meant she still got caught by the flood, its rapid current pulling her along. She forced her frozen limbs to move as she tried to break free, but she couldn't fight it. With the last bit of her strength, she let out a cry. Easy, I'm sorry. In a space with no walls, floors, or ceiling, my body freed from gravity, I floated gently to the bottom. I was in a vast space permeated by complete darkness. I knew what had happened. I had caught my foot on something and fallen. Fallen into the treasure chest. A complete failure of awareness. So this is Mimicus Interior, huh? While straining my eyes and looking skyward, I activated Owl's Eye, a relic that granted night vision. Stuff like this happened all the time, so I kept this ring on me whenever I could. With my vision secured, I looked around, but didn't spy anything resembling an exit. Liz and Tino had said they would have been able to get out if they hadn't been distracted. I couldn't say the same. Thankfully, I was unhurt. I was pretty sure I had fallen a great distance, but this was probably another of Mimicus' features. This way, you could safely store delicate items. What a superb treasure chest. Compared to that, what was I? Rolling across the lounge floor had used up another safety ring, exhausting the last of my supply. This was bad. If I ran into that noble spirit again, I didn't know what I could do but grovel and beg for forgiveness. I might be screwed. After having so much happen in one day, I was starting to feel woozy. I took a deep breath and re-examined my surroundings. My breath caught in my throat. In the middle of the darkness was an old town. There were hastily constructed buildings and maintained roads. There were also a number of pillars that appeared to be street lamps. What the hell did Mimicry eat that resulted in a town inside him? What gluttony! By the way, how do I get out of here? If someone tries to pull me out, will an exit appear in front of me or something? I should have asked those people when I rescued them. I sighed and thought it over when a crack in the sky suddenly formed above me. Something like mud began to gush out. The liquid solidified, taking the form of the noble spirit. No escape. I'll kill you, Krai Andrey. My fury will not go unsatiated. The ominous voice echoed through the quiet, empty streets. It was too late to regret not wearing perfect vacation. I really hadn't expected that thing would chase me so far. What did I ever do to it? Surely it couldn't have a grudge. And that ring was out of mana. Krai Andrey, it snarled while looking around, no matter where you hide, I'll find you. Looks like it won't catch me immediately. Perhaps it was for the best that I had momentarily escaped its sights. Mimicry looked fairly spacious, so there was a chance that if I laid low, the curse would give up and go somewhere else. Liz wasn't far off, so she could pull me out. Not to mention, people didn't get hungry or anything in this space. Staying put was my best option. Evading the curse, I snuck over to a random 2-story building and let myself in. Taking every little precaution to make not the slightest sound, I closed the door. The very next moment, the noble spirit shot out some with an explosive boom. Black water rushed from its small frame, and a viscous rain began to fall. Tchem! It was like a river rampaging during a storm. In an instant, the wide roads were flooded by thick globs, drenching the town. I heard the noble spirit's voice, seemingly coming from nowhere and everywhere. There's no escape. Your attempts will prove vain. Do not think you can evade me, human. Is the whole town going to be flooded? In a panic, I turned the lock, but the black water just entered through the gaps in the door. The townscape wasn't being destroyed, so I doubted the water had any innate attack power, but I could still tell that nothing good would happen if I touched it. I scrambled up to the second floor and peered out a window. It was terrible out there. Black water flowed through the streets, and muck fell from above. If I hadn't gotten inside, even if I somehow managed to keep my feet out of the water, there would have been no evading the pouring rain. Amid the dark current, I caught sight of Tino. She flailed as the tide swept her along. Catching a lamppost, she began to climb desperately. It didn't look like she was having a good time, but at least touching the muck didn't spell instant death. Good thing Tino's all right. Though I guess this means my chances of getting pulled out have gone down a bit. Die, 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 die. Like a broken toy, the enraged voice echoed through the town. The water level was gradually increasing. What had started as a shallow layer now reached the first step on the stairs, and didn't look like it might abate any time soon. Going outside wasn't an option either. I was at my physical and mental limits. I wanted to lie down and sleep as soon as I could. With no more safety rings, all I could do was pray for a miracle, one where Liz or Ansem or Lucia or someone pulled me out. But I had low expectations. I wasn't that complacent, and I liked to believe I had a decent grasp on reality. I looked back on all the things that had happened since I became a hunter. When I first started out, it was a hellish series of odd events during which I barely felt alive. Becoming clan master had only introduced me to more insane encounters, but now, they all felt like good memories. As for regrets, I had just a few. Thinking about it, I realized I had been able to seal off the curse that Ansem and everyone else at the church hadn't been able to get rid of. Until now, I had done nothing but cause trouble for other people, but at the very end, I pulled off an upset worthy of a level 8. My only concern was Tino, but I guess the noble spirit was only after me. I had seen how tough she had become, so I was certain she would find a way to survive. There's nothing you can do for your master now. I surreptitiously waved to her from the window. It was the least I could do. With muck raining down on her, she spotted me and nearly began to cry. Don't look at me like that. The curse shouldn't hang around here once it kills me. If nothing else, I didn't think it would go after her as persistently as it did me, seeing as back during the chase, it had focused solely on me. I took deep breaths to calm my nerves. I probably still had a bit of time before the water reached me. Moving quietly, I began to look around for anything useful. Still, the house itself wasn't that big. It was even smaller than the Citri house. How sad that my final hunt would come to an end in such a small building. Or maybe it was a fitting end. I checked the rooms one after the other. The first turned up nothing, not even furniture. Something told me not to get my hopes up. One thing was for sure, this house didn't feel remotely lived in. Racked with disappointment, I opened the door at the end of the hall. It appeared to be a bedroom. In the center of the spacious room was a king-sized bed with a fluffy cover. Not that I had expected anything, but there really wasn't anything I could use to turn the situation around. I sighed. To think the final room would be one so destitute. No. Depending on how you see it, I might have hit the jackpot. I looked at it from the other way. It's not like I could have beaten that thing even if I had found a weapon. How can I see this as anything but God telling me to sleep? Echoed my dry, isolated voice. It was often said that hunters didn't die in beds, but I had one graciously laid out before me. Having retired in spirit from hunting a long time ago and seeing no use in struggling, I decided to get some shut-eye. More than that, though, I was exhausted. I wondered if I might wake up and find that this was all a bad dream, and everything was now back to normal, pure escapism. If anything, I would have liked to have a meal and a shower before climbing in. But I guess there's no point in getting greedy. With a big yawn, I grabbed the thick pile of blankets and yanked them back. I had my shoes off and my knee on the mattress when I noticed something. Someone's already here? I rubbed my eyes, then extended a very fearful hand. There in the dead center of the bed was a curled-up lump. Hair white as snow spread across the sheets, pointed ears stuck outward. Her exposed brown skin was like that to begin with, not from a suntan like Liz's was. With all that and her peculiar aura, I felt like I was looking at a large, placid animal. I brushed her skin and felt a healthy warmth. I recalled the first time we met her. She had been stranded back then as well. I nearly smiled at the nostalgia of it before I came to my senses. Eliza, it's morning. Get up. What are you doing here? Sleeping soundly on the bed was none other than the final member of Grieving Souls, Eliza Beck, the vagabond. She was the biggest free spirit of our party, uncontrollable for different reasons than Luke and Liz. A desert noble with a tendency to wander, a bad sense of direction, and an unreadable face, she was a mysterious one. I hadn't had the chance to see her recently, but with so few hunters like her, I didn't think there was any way this could be a case of mistaken identity. Utterly baffled, I grabbed a pillow and began whacking her on the head with it. It occurred to me that this had all started with that devil sword she brought to me. Hey, Eliza, get up, it's your time to shine. You can't occupy my bed. You're the only one who has to get wake-up calls from me. In the face of my attacks, Eliza contracted into a tighter ball. But I was desperate. Eliza might have been just as much of a good-for-nothing as I, but she was, in fact, good for something because she had earned a title while working as a solo hunter. And how the hell were you able to fall asleep in a place like this? Damn it, Eliza. After a number of puffy hits, she opened her eyes partway and slowly sat up. She looked at me vaguely. Kai? Yeah, it's me, Kai. As usual, the R was left out, but I wasn't going to fuss. She lived in a world much more vast and forgiving than mine. A world I wanted to live in. After looking at me through empty eyes, she collapsed back on the bed, almost as if pulled by gravity. ZZZ. Take a good look, Citri. This is what catching real ZS sounds like. Like hell is anyone gonna think this is fake? Hitting her any further wasn't going to do me any good. We were running out of time. For lack of any better options, I grabbed one of her long arms cast lazily across the bed and dragged her out. The sight of the curse should flip a switch even in someone like Eliza. Though she was a thief like Liz, unlike my childhood friend, Eliza was rather tall. She didn't weigh as much as you might expect, but lifting her was still a difficult feat for my frail body. Perhaps it was because she was sleeping like a log. Holding her arms, I somehow managed to get her out of the bed and onto my back. Despite being moved like luggage in the middle of her slumber, she put up no resistance, leaving herself in my care. Her chest, very developed for a noble spirit, pressed against me without reservation, but she still didn't wake up. Even Liz would show a bit more modesty. You're definitely cursed by something. In fact, when Citri would break down, I also got the feeling she was under the effects of some curse. Our party had too many cursed members. Normally, I wouldn't think or say it, but I will this time. KRR. Stop mumbling my name in your sleep. With one laborious step after another, I carried Eliza forward. The viscous flood was probably still going on outside. Gritting my teeth, I declared war on the noble spirit, complete desperation. Look upon our friend Eliza. Can you keep your calm after seeing our friend who exasperates even Luke? I've got it. Maybe the curse will calm down when it sees Eliza. Like animal therapy. Thus far, any living creature would tremble in fear if they encountered it. Some lowered their heads to the ground in prostration, while a few rare souls attempted to purify it. The expressions shown by that man, however, were unlike anything it had ever seen. He didn't cower, rather, he waved his hand and ran about the city while relying on trifling stratagems to resist. Where did you run, Krai Andrey? Fury proliferating, it searched the town shrouded in darkness. The raging torrent of muck and the falling rain were both a part of its being. Should any bit of it so much as brush against him, his position would be revealed immediately. It had already found that girl who had been driving the carpet, but she didn't matter in the slightest. Everything came second to Krai Andrey. He had looked down on it, made light of it, laughed at it. This was a form of trauma, one it had tasted many years ago. Until a fatal curse and utter despair were brought upon this man, its hatred for humanity would remain in the background. Flowing through the entire town, it slowly began to permeate the houses. The man had used bizarre equipment to remain unscathed even after several attacks, but that wouldn't happen again. Its body was not equipped for demolition. Turning itself into a flood was done solely in the name of killing that man. To ensure he drowned. To corrode his innards and torment his soul. Everything else was of little importance. This included the fact that there was a massive space inside this treasure chest, the betrayal of the 2 curses it had brought under its wing, and even what it would do once Krai Andrey was dead. Though he was eluding it, it could feel him nearby. He had to be hiding somewhere in this town. If the rain wasn't finding him, then perhaps he was hiding inside one of the buildings. Your struggle will be in vain, Krai Andrey. I have no forgiveness to offer to the likes of you. In sync with its scream, the rain intensified. There was no need to be clever, it would simply spread itself over every inch of this puzzling town. Then everything would be over. That man was helpless against its malign energies. He had powerful equipment, but nothing more. Humans had always been like this. Compared to noble spirits, their bodies were weak, a flaw which they made up for with their tools. Then they attacked, driven by insolence. Despite being intelligent enough to use language, their barbarism surpassed any monster of the forest. They let their emotions dictate their actions. Fear the Queen's judgment, human. Rue your transgressions, and perish. The flood was its anger. The rain, its tears. No matter how many years came and went, it would never forget the tragedies that occurred, nor let go of its anger. For now and all eternity, it would be the enemy of all humankind. The cursed water slowly increased. The only sounds in this old abandoned town were those of the current and the rain. He can't be far. He has to be close. His presence is here. The gravitating aura he initially gave off has disappeared, yet. There was a loud clatter from one of the houses. In an instant, a portion of the water formed a ball, then pressed itself against the second-story window of the house from which the noise had originated. And for just a brief moment, it forgot its anger. Staggered by the sight, the rain and rivers it had spent so long building up all vanished without a trace. On the second story of a completely forgettable building was Krai Andrey, that man for whom no curse could be too severe. The surprise came from what he carried on his back. The sheer shock was enough that it, a being that existed only as enmity to curse humanity, forgot its rage and fury for a second. On that man's back was one of its kin. Having once been a guardian to the noble spirits, surely this couldn't be a mistake. That was a noble spirit. Though her dark skin and white hair were unlike those that it once knew, it could tell. It felt like a strong connection to her. The blood in her was the same as that which once flowed in it long ago. Floating outside the window, it had at some point reverted to the form of its previous life. Through the pain, it made eye contact with Krai Andrey, catching him off guard. The tragedies of the past all came pouring back. The burning forests. Invading humans with savage weapons optimized for killing. Noble spirits running in terror. Howling laughter backed by the sound of flames. Houses that had been built among boughs and grew with their trees were brought down, platform and all. The humans appallingly chose to go for the women and children first. Their objectives were unclear. It knew that humans bought and sold noble spirits for high prices, but it couldn't fathom why. The notion that these people were also intelligent beings beggared belief. Being at war hardly felt like a justification for what they did. Therefore, until it satiated its wrath, not even death could keep it down. There was no need to consider why Krai was carrying a noble spirit. The anger that shock had pushed aside slowly began to heat up. A hostage. You bring a hostage before me? Its flesh altered in response to its fury. The kinswoman was languid, unmoving. This was beyond terrible. Beyond humiliating. Beyond tragic. Humans had always been like this, inherently flawed but capable of using their minds for evil. They would abduct children, take hostages, butcher and capture anyone who tried to stop them. They always resorted to unimaginably vile methods. However, such barbarous acts would be useless here. In its hand, a single lance had taken form. It was a twisting shaft of pitch black, one that shone in the darkness. This was its resolve, a crystallization of its decision to exterminate all of humanity. Words could serve no further purpose here. This was the point where all curses truly manifested. Still, Krai Andrey kept wearing that blank expression. Wretched human, I won't even give you time to repent. The lance would annihilate the human, not leaving behind so much as a fragment of his soul, all without laying a scratch on the kinswoman. It raised the lance. There was no need for strength, for the weapon was lethal to all humankind. Even a mighty warrior would die within a second upon contact. It twisted its body. Then, just as it was about to dedicate its entirety to hurling the lance, Krai Andrey collapsed. Wah! He made a strange sound as he was crushed. It stopped just before it could take the throw. Nothing about the way he hit the ground suggested it was an evasive maneuver. It was almost as if the kinswoman was just too heavy for him. He lay flattened beneath her. It stood frozen, still posed as if about to strike. That was when the kinswoman made her first groggy movement. She had a willowy, beautiful body sculpted by nature. Tranquil mana coursed through her. Palms to the ground, she pushed her torso up, then slowly got on her feet. She raised her head, her vague crimson eyes settling on it. She was alive. Well, that was perhaps only natural since she was a hostage, but she appeared unhurt and moved without the slightest sign of discomfort. It could sense her hale heartbeat and lively aura. Standing up, she showed no notable injuries. In fact, this kinswoman came off as quite strong, even on par with her ancestors. This only made her lack of resistance all the more baffling. It lost its anger and could do nothing but stare slack-jawed. The kinswoman looked idly down at Krai, then grabbed his limp hand and pulled him up without any particular urgency. It was a scene that shouldn't have been possible. That a noble spirit would lend a hand to their villainous human captor stood in the face of all reason. With its emotions in disarray, it could no longer manifest the spear in its hands. The weapon disappeared. The kinswoman wrapped her arms around Krai to keep him steady on his feet. After staring at it for a good half a minute or so, she nodded and called it by the name it once used. Your Majesty Queen Shero Iris Fressel. The war ended long ago. Let's return to the forest. Yeah, you can't beat good old dialogue. We're not monsters or phantoms. With Eliza hugging me like a plushie, I nodded and smiled halfway. Just like always, I didn't really understand what was going on, but it looked like Eliza had succeeded in starting a conversation with the curse. The cursed noble spirit no longer seemed intent on killing me. The freaky spear pointed at me had also disappeared into thin air. I could hardly believe I had been prepared to die just moments ago. Dumbfounded, the noble spirit looked at Eliza and the package cradled in her arms, me. The war ended. It did, thanks to your highness. The humans learned to fear the noble spirits because of you. Preposterous. The humans. They stopped fighting. Wasn't the war between us a pretty long time ago? Though it still didn't feel quite right to say we were on good terms, at least there was no war going on, and a small number of noble spirits lived among humans. I wasn't exactly an expert on this stuff, but this person was super far behind the times. This isn't someone you know, is it? I asked. Kai. Good boy, she calmly whispered in response while rubbing her cheek against me. Noble spirits aged differently from humans. Though I wasn't sure how old Eliza was, even someone like her couldn't be thousands of years old. I failed to understand how she might be acquainted with the supposedly ancient curse. We've searched so much. Seeing my confusion, Eliza gave a brief explanation. She's our champion. We've yearned for this day. Well, good for you guys. That didn't explain anything, but I guess it's fine. If Eliza was content, then I wasn't going to object. I was just thankful to be alive. Hey, if presenting a noble spirit was enough, then couldn't we have stopped this curse a long time? Aren't Chris and the others all out of town? Man, I heard they were searching for something, but this is a multi-layered surprise. But, well, all's well that ends well, I guess. I see. I'm glad you guys found what you were looking for. Eliza nodded in response, seemingly unbothered by my obviously non-committal response. She was never one to fuss over details. It's part of why we got along so well. With the cursed noble spirit still utterly baffled, Eliza repeated herself for good measure. We no longer need any curses. Your Majesty. Your people await you. Ugh. Why you're lying. So much death and animosity, I'll uproot these humans like weeds. Krai Andrey. I'll crush this foolish man who mocked me. What I had been calling a curse apparently had a name. The noble spirit named Shero, as she appeared to be called, focused her disdainful gaze on me and nothing else. By the look of it, she wanted to kill at least me, if nobody else. What the hell did I do? Please, stop it. I'm all out of safety rings. After a few moments of vague silence, Eliza pressed her cheek against my head and hugged me tightly. I'm sorry. Kai is my mate. Oh, that got her, I said. Shero froze. Then, without saying a word, crumpled. Critical hits are a thief's speciality after all. Shero's form faded. The pendant she had worn hit the ground with a rattle. After holding on to me a bit longer, Eliza slowly retrieved the pendant, then showed me a peace sign. You must have a lot of guts if you can just call me your mate like it's nothing. After hearing of the emergency, they abandoned their plans and made a beeline back to the imperial capital. Upon arrival, Franz found the city buzzing about the appearance of new monstrosities. The members of Starlight sounded utterly astonished as they looked around. No way. This presence. A powerful burst of emotion. There are still traces of it. This might be our lucky day. Franz, this is the work of a curse, and one much more powerful than Murren's lament. I screwed up, Franz said. Figure out what happened as soon as you can. He had made a mistake taking such a large portion of knights to greet the noble spirit. Upon returning to the Zero Order's headquarters, he started gathering information. What came in defied comprehension. There was some monstrous ape that had jumped across the rooftops and attacked a church. Then Murren's lament and the Black Knight were freed, and a dragon appeared from the source. Then the ape transformed into a different sort of dragon. It attacked the Greedier Academy of Magic and the Sword Saints dojo. And after all that, it dissolved into muck. It was a confounding sequence of events. What was clear was that they may have been wrong in their interpretation of the prophecy and that the matter had already been resolved. But be that as it may, a fiend had still run roughshod over the historic streets of Zerbrudia. For a man tasked with protecting the city, that was something to be ashamed of. The damage was minor, Franz said. So far, no fatalities have been reported. Very fortunate, that. I'd bet the curse was focused on something else, went Lapis's calm analysis. Though we refer to them all as curses, there are different varieties. The places attacked directly were the church, the Zerbrudia Academy of Magic, and the Soln School of Swordsmanship Dojo, Franz continued. The information was a jumbled mess, but they were sorting through what facts they had. Chem perfectly overlaps with the recent chaos. And if it was something not even Ark could stop. He didn't know where this thing had come from, but it was the Knight's error that allowed it to make its way into the imperial capital. He had been of the belief that they were prepared for anything and everything. Evidently, that outlook had been naive. However, it was also true that increased vigilance was impossible. Franz stopped. He furrowed his brow. Why did the fiend disappear? He asked. It was clearly unnatural. Why did a curse unhindered by the Church of the Radiant Spirit, Ark, the Abyssal Inferno, and, more troubling, vanish? And should Lapis be correct in that the curse had a different target, the number of witnesses was still too high to explain the lack of injured. A sudden chill ran down Franz's spine. He didn't like this. Such a large incident, so few casualties. He had felt this same foreboding not long ago. Franz, do we still not know where the curse disappeared? That might tell us something, Lapis prodded with her usual arrogance. She appeared calm at a glance, but the faint urgency in her voice didn't get past Franz. Is there any chance this is ringing bells for you? I won't say it isn't, it's just, Even if I'm on the right track, it wouldn't explain the lack of deaths. I'm keeping my expectations low, as should you. She's an arrogant one, all right. I would have snapped if I weren't already used to dealing with the 1,000 tricks. A knight sent to gather information burst into the room. He shoved the door aside and didn't even wait to catch his breath. Ha, Captain Franz, we've learned where the curse went. It appears to have vanished at the First Steps clan house. The First Steps clan house. Ah, so that's it. Of course, that's it, God damn it. Realizing the source of his bad premonitions, Franz's cheek twitched. The absurdly large incident. The oddly low casualties. Even the immense stress bearing down on Franz. It all sounded a hell of a lot like one of those 1,000 trials. Sure, Franz didn't think that even that man could interfere with a foretelling from the astral divinarium. But he easily could have gotten word of it and planned some strange scheme around it. Lapis fell into a stiff silence, as if something had occurred to her. Just then, there was a buzzing from Franz's pocket. It was the sounding stone connected to the astral divinarium. He froze when he heard their rapid report. The prophecy faded. Party, she said, blinking and nibbling on a chocolate bar. In a vast desert, a stroke of bad luck and some quicksand had pulled us underground. There we found ourselves in front of a treasure vault unlike any other, and with it, an oddball noble spirit. Grieving Souls was a party made from a group of childhood friends. For better or worse, the 6 of us were closely acquainted. It was typical for hunter parties to consist of 6 people anyway. We had all our bases covered as far as roles went, but carrying me as deadweight opened up gaps in our defenses. I had assigned myself the task of finding a new member once we reached the imperial capital and before we established ourselves as hunters. I had made repeated attempts at recruiting, but anyone capable of keeping up with Grieving Souls already had a party, and most of them didn't gel with our headstrong members. Going along with their headlong charge down the road to glory required both talent and a certain degree of tolerance. While walking through the desert, a mistake led to us getting swallowed up by quicksand, which brought us to a bizarre treasure vault. It was on this detour that we found a hunter named Eliza, a rare being that had the qualities I was looking for. She worked solo and wasn't panicking in the slightest despite having sunk into quicksand by herself. In fact, she was so relaxed that she had started to take a nap in this remote location. I had never met a noble spirit so agreeable. I didn't know what her skills were like, but I had no doubts that she would be able to fit in with Grieving Souls. Most of all, though, finding her stranded in a place like this made me feel a strong affinity for her. And if she joined us, I wouldn't be the only one prone to taking naps. She would balance the scales. With those calculations made, I invited her to our party. After a brief silence, she tilted her head. Why? I gave you a chocolate bar, didn't I? You can also leave whenever you want, and hunting with us is more fun than doing it alone. Most importantly, it's safer. It didn't come as much of a shock to see that she had trouble accepting such an abrupt party invitation. You could hardly blame her, especially when you considered that invitations like this were often used by people looking to take advantage of women who hunted. There's something I'm searching for, she said while looking vaguely at the chocolate bar. We'll search with you. We've got a knack for that sort of thing. I didn't know what she was looking for, but I was sure my friends would be able to find it. I gave my utterly irresponsible assurance in a hard-boiled voice, which Eliza watched through sleepy eyes. Later on, we would be hit with the shocking revelations that Eliza hadn't been lost or anything, and that she had reached the treasure vault through a different route. She was a notable hunter recognizable by anyone in the know, and with her excellent detection skills, she was safer running solo than in a party. We would run into our share of trouble, but I looked back on it all fondly. Through it all, she never raised the possibility of withdrawing. The only flaw in my calculations was that her joining didn't make my bouts of laziness any less conspicuous, but asking any more of her would have been greedy. Man, I really thought I might be done for this time. I collapsed in the chair in my office and let out a sigh. Krai, don't you say that every time? Eva asked with a bit of exasperation. No, really, if you hadn't pulled me out of there, I would have spent an eternity in a world of darkness. It's really gloomy inside that treasure chest. While being chased by the curse, and when sealed inside the chest, I thought I was going to die. After Eliza somehow talked Shero down, I was still sweating at the idea that we might be stuck down there. I owed Eva my life. Being in her presence felt like proof that my ordinary life had returned. It appeared Eliza's work had been the finishing blow. A night had passed, and peace was gradually returning to the city. The chaos dominated the newspapers, but that would go away with time. I knew Franz would take care of this for me once he got back, and this was hardly the first time something crazy had happened here. Though the articles described the mayhem, they didn't go into any sort of detail, probably because of the sensitive nature of it all. Franz had already been in contact with the media regarding the curse incidents, so they probably didn't need to be told that they should keep quiet about this as well. For all the people affected by the trouble, the actual damage was fairly minor. Miraculously, nobody died. Overwhelming exhaustion was the cause of Hugh's collapse, so he had never been in mortal danger. However, if Eliza hadn't been eaten by Mimikry when she had, I would have been screwed. As she told it, before our return, she happened to swing by the lounge, where she found Mimikry, sprung the trap, and got eaten. Really, they both did me a favor there. Still, I know what she's like, but what kind of person finds a bed in a place like that and just decides to wait? No. With Tino all right and Eliza finding what she had been looking for, it was a happy ending overall. It's just that if even one thing hadn't fallen into place, I might have never gotten the chance to see sunlight ever again. I wasn't sure I had ever felt so tired in my life. My physical and mental fatigue would take more than a single night's rest to recover from. I wanted to sleep for an entire month. Maybe I'll live inside Mimikry for a bit. Eva then removed the safety ring from her right ring finger and placed it on my desk. I just remembered. Krai, thank you for this. It served me well. It's all over now, right? Eva sighed when she saw how wide my eyes went. Thanks to that ring you lent me, it ensured I was unaffected by the curse. I was checking on the progress of the lounge's repairs when you and Tino suddenly appeared, then got swallowed up. I thought you might have died. Are you telling me you were in the lounge when that happened? I hadn't noticed. It was all over, but I still felt a chill run down my spine, and my heart began to pound. Sure, I had expected Liz, not Eva, to rescue me, but, man, it just goes to show the value of being prepared. After all the messes I had made, I don't think I'd ever forgive myself if something happened to her. I held the ring between my fingers and looked at it for a moment before holding it out in front of her. I didn't lend this to you, I gave it to you. It's an employee benefit. You can take it to Lucia for charging. Employee, I don't need this. Don't say that. It might help you next time there's trouble. Please make sure that doesn't come to pass. Please, I implore you. Does Eva think I had something specific in mind when I gave her that? Not at all. There was nothing in my mind. Look at what happened this time. I ran out of safety rings, and it's not like one more would have made a meaningful difference anyway. Despite her grimacing, I grabbed her hand and put the ring on her finger. Now she was safe. Gosh, I think giving her a safety ring was the only thing I did that didn't make the situation worse. While I thought about this, Eva rubbed the ring, looking unsettled. Trying to change the subject, she pointed at the teddy bear sitting on the corner of my desk. By the way, what's this stuffed animal? It looks like it's seen better days. I found it in the town inside Mimikry. Nice, isn't it? Yet another weird item. Wait. Is that? It was a tattered and battered stuffed bear. It was torn here and there, and its fur, which I presume was once a light brown, was stained black in parts. The sad thing was missing both an eye and an arm. Around its neck, I had put the cross pendant that I had found with it, completing the cursed set. The teddy bear was most likely the true body of Murin's lament. The pendant, meanwhile, belonged to the Black Knight that had been with her, so I didn't see what else it could be. I wasn't sure if the curses still lingered on or not, but they had protected me in the end, for one reason or another, so I couldn't stop myself from bringing them back with me. Impulse decisions like this were a bad habit of mine. Seeing that Eva was putting her exceptional intuition to use, I held up a finger. Don't tell the others. See, certainly. Sometime soon, I'm gonna give it a good wash and let it dry in the sun, I said with a grin. But first I need to replace the innards. Replace the missing eye and arm, then have Citri give it an overhaul. Relics couldn't be revamped, but cursed items could. Surely Murin would appreciate it. But then, even though none of us touched it, the teddy bear suddenly fell over. Eva trembled dramatically. The remaining arm was extended towards me as if begging for help. With a sigh, I righted the stuffed animal. Looks like I should keep the innards as they are. Crowds of people went this way and that outside the gates of the imperial capital of Zabrudia. It was almost as if a curse hadn't just been rampaging around. Few cities reached the heights of prosperity that the imperial capital was currently seeing. Wealth brings people in, but they aren't necessarily all of the good sort. The holy land of treasure hunting, Zabrudia, was a bountiful place, but its capital was a city of never-ending trouble. By paying just a bit of attention, she could hear mingled with talk of the curse gossip about the fight between Hidden Curse and Akashic Tower, the failed attempt on the Emperor's life, and more. Apparently, the severity of the curse incident only made it less remarkable. Why? Little Sister Fox mumbled. She stood in a corner of the gate that received little traffic or attention. Her plan had been flawless. She had taken a top-tier cursed item long held in the storage of Peregrine Lodge, then used Hugh to ensure it was passed on to Mr. Caution, where it successfully manifested. Yet what took place after that was completely incomprehensible to her, and she had watched the whole thing closely. She didn't understand why a curse that was supposed to butcher any human would instead fixate on Mr. Caution, nor could she figure out why he had taken the curse on a trip across the imperial capital. But more than that, how had a simple human managed to subdue it? That curse was made from an extraordinarily powerful will. Little Sister Fox was the progeny of a god, and even she would have struggled to deal with it. Purifying it by force would have been difficult, and a curse birthed by a wish for all humankind to suffer was unlikely to sit at a negotiating table with them. Nonetheless, the fact remained that despite the curse being let loose, the imperial capital still stood, and not one person had died. Feeling the sudden vibration of her smartphone, she lazily brought it to her ear. "It appears you've lost this battle of wits," said the soft voice of Big Brother Fox. Word must have reached him. His voice didn't contain a hint of blame, yet Little Sister Fox took a deep breath before voicing her objections. "I haven't lost yet. You can't deny he fell for my ploy. This is a draw." While it certainly hadn't turned into the major incident she had hoped for, the city had received a few scars. To say she had lost was rather unforgiving. Yet Big Brother Fox told her frankly, Peregrine Lodge lost a seed of calamity, and no human was significantly harmed. I doubt I need to spell it out, but there are few outcomes worse than this one. Recall that a cursed item gone missing is far more troublesome than one purified. I don't know if that human planned for this outcome, but you're lying to yourself if you think you haven't lost. Seeing no room for argument, Little Sister Fox bit her lip. "It's time you returned home," Big Brother Fox said gently. "Gods must be feared. If you continue to be defeated in battles of wit like this, our powers will eventually be lost. You're making a disgrace of us by insisting on these battles despite your repeated losses. It doesn't befit the progeny of the Holy Fox. It's a bit early for you to challenge Mr. Caution." She hesitated for a moment. Understood. Back in Peregrine Lodge, she had said it herself. This would be the last time she attempted a battle of wits. She couldn't break that contract. As much as it chagrined her, she had been utterly defeated. The call ended. As she clenched her fist in humiliation, the smartphone vibrated once more. The caller was the man they had just been talking about, Mr. Caution. Despite her defeats, she was still the offspring of a greater being. Emails were risky enough, but calling her proved that he really had no sense of caution. "What? Yoo-hoo, sorry to call you out of the blue. Weird question, but did you do something? I know, I've probably got the wrong idea, but Hugh, an acquaintance of mine, was saying some stuff that made no sense." She didn't say anything. "Yeah, I'm sure I'm imagining things, sorry. Here, wanna go out for fried tofu?" Truly, no sense of caution. He wasn't proclaiming victory, yet it still grated on her. To call her just so he could make some stupid provocation. Did he really think that would work on the progeny of a god? Without saying a word, Little Sister Fox ended the call. Driven by impulse, she slammed her smartphone into the ground.